At the Korea Olympic Stadium, the team representing Korea enters the stadium together. It is explained that the Korean national team is currently ranked number 1 in the world. One of the main players from Team Korea is now standing at the stadium, getting ready. The target he has to shoot is 70 meters away, and the full target has a diameter of 1 meter and 22 centimeters. However, the inner extent area is much smaller, with a diameter of only 6.1 centimeters. It is also said that for an arrow to go into such a small target, it only takes about 1 second. But in this cold and serious sport where everything can change in just a few seconds, even a 0.1 centimeter mistake is not allowed. After that, one of the players steps into his position, raises his bow, carefully pulls the string back, and then shoots the arrow toward the target with full focus. Earlier, all the players had already gathered at the shooting venue before the round began. During this time, a boy with red hair is shown calling his parents, who really want to come and watch him play. The boy tells them it is fine that they are at work and reassures them, while also mentioning that the round will start in 20 minutes. He also tells them that they will still be able to watch the award ceremony later. The atmosphere remains tense as everyone prepares for the start of the round. The boy then ends the call, and his mother, who is driving a car, thinks that their son, Binwoo, is really mad. Binwoo's mom then tells the dad that she lied because it's going to take an hour for them to reach. Back in the venue, Binwoo enters the stadium, and everyone looks at him wondering if he is here to break another record today. A guy named Yundal approaches Binwoo and asks if he hears everyone talking about him. At the same time, a girl's routine card fell on the floor and she freaks out, saying her competition is going to go bad now since it's a bad luck for her. Unexpectedly, Binwoo helps her take that card and says that she is going to do a good job. The girl starts blushing, and her name turns out to be Eun-dong. After that, the final round of the competition starts, and all the players stand at their positions. Binwoo raises his bow, pulls the string, and shoots a perfect arrow like he usually does. At the same time, a boy sitting in a car with his family hears a loud noise from outside and gets scared, thinking it might be a gunshot. His father tells him that there is an archery competition going on, so the sound is probably from that. Back at the competition, Binwoo is already far ahead of everyone else. It is said that if his last arrow hits a perfect 10, he will make a record for hitting 10s in every round. Finally, Binwoo shoots his last arrow, and it hits an X10. He manages to hit every target perfectly and sets a new record. Everyone is shocked and starts wondering if a 14-year-old boy can really do something like this. Binwoo then looks around and sees that other players have their parents with them, but he cannot find his own. Just then, a man tells Binwoo that his parents died in a car accident. What was supposed to be the best day of his life suddenly turns into a tragedy. That same day, Binwoo decides to quit archery. 3 years later, Binwoo has become the class president at his school, and many students still cannot believe that someone like him ended up in that position. One of the boys comments that even though Binwoo looks a bit strange or gloomy, he is still the top student in the class, and they do not understand why someone who is so good at studies always looks so serious and unhappy. Meanwhile, at the chairman's office, the chairman is sitting with a student named Gonghyun. She cannot accept the fact that he managed to become a national athlete in just 2 years of training and experience. She then asks whether his success is because of the coach who guided him along the way. However, the coach quickly responds that everything Gonghyun achieved is only because of his own hard work and dedication. After hearing this, the chairman says that she is glad she was able to recruit the coach for the team. She then expresses her goal clearly, saying that she wants to turn their archery club into the best in the entire country. The chairman then introduces her son to the coach, saying he was quite good at archery during middle school, but he is like a freak now because he hung out with the wrong people. The chairman also decides to leave his son under the coach's care so that the coach can properly lead the archery club. When the meeting finishes, Gonghyun accidentally bumps shoulders with Binwoo while passing by. Because of this small impact, Binwoo suddenly gets many flashbacks in his mind, including people saying bad things about him and also an incident where a senior who once competed against him ended up being hospitalized. Because of these rumors and events, many people start to believe that Binwoo is a boy who brings bad luck and unhappiness. Later, the homeroom teacher speaks with Binwoo in the office. During this time, a girl named Eun-dong, whom Binwoo had met years ago at an archery venue, recognizes him again. After Binwoo leaves the teacher's office, another girl named Nari hits him on the head and tells him to stop standing there like a statue. Nari keeps teasing him and says that he must be angry because the school now has an archery club, even though Binwoo had purposely chosen a school that did not have one in the first place. Meanwhile, the new archery coach brings his belongings into the office, and one of his colleagues asks him if that is all the stuff he brought with him. The colleague also asks if it is because he has been moving from place to place for a long time. The coach replies that he has itchy feet and cannot stay in one place for too long. After hearing that, the colleague starts thinking that since the chairman personally recruited him, he expected the coach to be someone very impressive, but instead he seems like just an ordinary coach. Later, when the coach begins looking through the students' files, the first file he notices is Binwoo's. Back in the classroom, Binwoo is sitting right in front of Gonghyun's seat, and he quickly recognizes him. Binwoo thinks to himself that Gonghyun became a national team candidate in only 2 years, making him a genius archer who wins gold medals in almost every competition. Because of this, Binwoo believes that as long as he does not get involved with someone like him, he will not end up becoming miserable again. When the classes finally end, the coach suddenly runs straight toward Binwoo's classroom and says that he wants to ask him for a favor. The coach asks Binwoo to go to the incinerator because some of the kids throw away important equipment after thinking it is just useless trash. He says it would really help if Binwoo goes instead because he suddenly gets a call from his boss and cannot leave right now. However, Binwoo immediately thinks about how the incinerator is located in the place he hates and avoids the most. The coach notices that Binwoo clearly does not want to go, so he suddenly starts acting worried and wonders out loud about what he should do since today is the day all the trash gets burned. He keeps saying that if nobody hurries, then everything inside the incinerator will completely burn away. After seeing the coach's fake crying and crocodile tears, Binwoo finally gives in and agrees to help him before heading toward the ground. While walking there, Binwoo starts wondering how the coach even knows his name because it feels very strange to him. A moment later, he notices several archery rackets lying on the ground and becomes completely surprised after seeing them there. Meanwhile, the coach secretly goes to the chairman's son and tells him that he accidentally leaves behind the secret to winning a gold medal inside a very precious bag that is now sitting inside the incinerator, so he should quickly go there and bring it back. After that, the coach also goes to Gonghyun and tells him that Jungi wants to meet him at the incinerator right away. In response, Gonghyun says that he first needs to put down all of his equipment before going there. However, the coach says that he should take a weapon at least that surprises Gonghyun, but he still goes. Later, Binwoo finds a blue bag that the coach told him about, and wonders that this is totally fine, so why would anyone think that it's trash? Suddenly, the archery bow falls on the ground, and he gets stunned wondering why this is here. At that moment, all the archery memories flooded inside his mind, and he grabbed the bow. Suddenly, the long-haired guy and Gonghyun arrive, and the long-haired guy gets furious to see the bow on the ground thinking that Binwoo is trying to steal his bow. Binwoo tries to explain that the bow is thrown outside, so he only picks it up by coincidence after seeing it there. However, the long-haired guy becomes even more angry after hearing that and says there is no way he is going to believe such a story. While staring at Binwoo, the man starts looking at his face more carefully because he feels like he has seen him somewhere before. After thinking for some time, he finally realizes that Binwoo is the legendary boy who shoots a perfect 10 points in every single game. The man also remembers hearing that Binwoo leaves the archery world after creating a completely new record, so he starts wondering why someone like him is suddenly here now. A moment later, the long-haired guy notices Gonghyun standing there as well and says that Gonghyun was once called a genius just like Binwoo, the legendary perfect score boy, but now people call him the unfortunate boy instead. The man then warns Gonghyun that if he gets involved with Binwoo, bad things might start happening to him too. Right after saying that, the long-haired guy suddenly throws the bow into the fire and says that he cannot use such an unlucky bow anymore, completely shocking both of the boys. Sometime later, all the students gather on the ground, and Undong asks Senior Sora about the situation. Sora tells her that Junki is going to do a competition, so he rents the training grounds. Undong gets excited and thinks that they are finally going to see a match between Gonghyun and Junki, but Sora says that the competitor is Binwoo this time. Just then, a glasses guy also steps forward saying he got a deep impression of Binwoo at the match 3 years ago, like posture, accuracy, balance were all so perfect that he couldn't point out anything. Sora says that she understands that he is a fan of Binwoo, but she thinks that he is going to lose. She explains that archery is a sport of feeling, and they have to practice over and over again to match the bow and arrows with their body. It's been 3 years since Binwoo let go of his bow and she don't know what confidence he had to accept the match. She also mentions that bow is Gonghyun's, which is 44 pounds, the heaviest among the freshman students. Sora also wonders what's Binwoo's reason for choosing archery again, and she won't cheer for a guy who betrayed archery. Junki then asks Binwoo if he is ready, saying if it was an official match, then the first person to reach 6 points would win. However, considering Binwoo's situation, Junki says that if he even gets 1 point, he will win. Binwoo says that if he wins then he has to apologize. After that, both players stand in their position and Junki thinks that he is familiar with the training ground and the atmosphere, so there is no doubt that he is going to win. Junki then shoots his first shot, and now it's Binwoo's turn. Binwoo takes out the bow so fast and pulls the string that it actually surprises everyone, but the shot doesn't even hit the target. Sara thinks that it was expected because he released the arrow even before it reached the clicker, and it's to be expected since he doesn't have muscles. The first set ends with Junki winning the round, and soon the second set begins right after that. The match continues for 2 more sets, and surprisingly, Junki manages to win both of them as well without much trouble. While watching the results, Junki starts thinking that Binwoo's arrows cannot even get close to the target properly, and it becomes obvious to him that Binwoo was far too arrogant for accepting a match he could never win. After seeing this, the people around them begin mocking Binwoo, wondering how someone who was once called a genius could now play so badly and look completely useless. Sara then tells Undong that it is probably time for them to leave because the match already looks decided, but Undong refuses and points out that all of Binwoo's arrows keep piercing the ground in almost the exact same area. She explains that this means Binwoo is still controlling the bow properly even now. Undong also believes that Binwoo's body is slowly starting to remember his true self again, even if it is taking some time. On the other side, Binwoo keeps thinking about how he can barely feel his hand anymore because of the painful burn injury he gets earlier. When the 4th set starts, Junki begins feeling bored because he believes the result of the match is already completely obvious. However, he suddenly becomes shocked after noticing that Binwoo is now shooting with his left hand while still using a right-handed bow. This time, Binwoo's arrow lands on the number 5 ring, which immediately surprises Junki. When it becomes Junki's turn, he shoots an arrow that lands on number 6, but to his complete surprise, Binwoo also hits number 6 right after him. Finally, the 5th set starts, and from this moment, every single shot becomes extremely important for both of them. At this point, Junki is slowly starting to lose his calm as he keeps thinking that although what Binwoo did earlier was surprising, it still does not change the overall result of the match. He keeps repeating to himself that nobody understands this place better than he does because he practices archery there every single day without fail. Just then, heavy rain suddenly begins falling, making it much harder for Junki to clearly see the target or properly read the direction of the wind. While everyone struggles because of the weather, Binwoo suddenly starts smiling, and that alone makes Junki become even more nervous than before. A moment later, Binwoo calmly pulls back the bowstring and releases the arrow, which flies straight toward the target before landing on 8 points. Seeing that shot immediately shocks everyone watching the match, and one person even mentions hearing rumors years ago that bad weather never affects Binwoo's shooting ability at all. Meanwhile, Junki completely starts losing his confidence as he keeps wondering how Binwoo is able to perform this well even though he has not touched a bowstring for the past 3 years. Trying to calm himself down, Junki takes his next shot and manages to score a perfect 9 points. After seeing that, he becomes confident again and thinks there is no possible way Binwoo can match that score in such heavy rain. However, to his complete surprise, Binwoo also scores a 9 in the middle of the rain, making the entire situation far more confusing for everyone watching the match. Junki then gets scared and thinks that he should have never suggested they have this match in the first place. When Binwoo scores 10 on another shot, everyone looks completely shocked. After that, Binwoo turns to Junki and thanks him that annoys him even more. Just then, the coach shows up asking if they have a match, but Binwoo walks past him that made the coach think that his plan might have succeeded. Binwoo then runs into Nari on his way, who is furious at Binwoo for forgetting that they have dinner at her place. When the girl notices the bandage wrapped around Binwoo's hand, she immediately starts feeling worried about him and wonders if his injury is serious. However, Binwoo calmly tells her that he is doing fine and says there is nothing she needs to worry about. Right after that, Binwoo picks up the lunch and tells her that they should eat together, which completely confuses the girl because she does not expect him to suddenly say something like that. Later that night, Gonghyun continues practicing his archery training by himself for a long time. After watching him for a while, the coach asks if something is bothering him because he already trains longer than the normal time limit. Gonghyun then asks the coach to tell him more about Binwoo, and hearing that makes the coach realize that Gonghyun is finally starting to take interest in another person's life for the first time in a while. Gonghyun also asks if Binwoo used to be an archer too because he has never once seen him during any matches before. In response, the coach explains that Binwoo plays his final championship match when he is only 14 years old, and the coach knows about all of this because he used to be friends with Binwoo's own coach back then. The next day, 2 boys at another school begin talking about the rumors they hear regarding the archery match between Binwoo and Junki. The two continue discussing it with excitement until Yoon-dal, who is now much older than before, suddenly overhears their conversation nearby. Later that day, Yoon's coach announces to the entire team that the results for this month's matches are finally out. He then begins reading the names of the players according to their ranks and specifically calls Yoon to come forward first. The coach explains that Yoon once again takes first place this month, and he even shows everyone the scorecards along with Yoon's target results as proof. After that, the coach congratulates Yoon and says that he will continue being the team captain for this month as always before leaving the rest of the meeting in his hands. Yoon then starts congratulating player Woil for successfully moving up from C rank to A rank, explaining that Woil manages to score 28 perfect 10s out of a total of 36 shots. After that, Yoon continues congratulating the other players one by one while also giving each of them advice on how they can improve even more. However, things become different when he reaches player Mamoru, who is treated like a complete loser by everyone else. Out of 36 shots, only half of Maru's arrows score 10s, and he even misses one shot completely. Mamoru quickly apologizes and explains that his mother is sick this month, so he does not get enough time to properly practice archery. However, Yoon coldly responds that everyone there has families too and says that this is the lamest excuse he has ever heard. Mamoru then politely tells Yoon that he promises to do much better next time and says he would really appreciate it if Yoon could help him improve. Instead of helping him, Yoon Dal starts acting like he is the boss of everyone and orders Mamoru to go bring him something to drink. After seeing that, the other students around them also begin ordering Mamoru around and treating him more like a servant than a teammate. At the same time, somebody uploads an online post talking about how Junki loses his match against Bin-woo. Because of that, Junki once again starts losing his mind as usual while thinking that everyone probably already knows about the result of yesterday's match. He becomes so angry and stressed that he feels like he might completely go berserk if anyone says the wrong thing to him. Just then, Junki catches two students secretly smoking near the school grounds. He immediately takes the cigarettes and the other stuff away from them before scolding them for doing something like that inside the school area. The students become frightened after hearing him yell and quickly run away from the place. Right at that moment, a group of guys wearing black hoodies suddenly appears nearby. On the other side, Bin-woo is running somewhere while thinking about how excited he feels because of yesterday's match, since he becomes so worked up that he cannot sleep at all during the entire night. While heading somewhere, Bin-woo suddenly notices a group of people gathered in a corner beating up Junki badly. Bin-woo keeps watching them and wonders why the strange people are ganging up on Junki. Since Junki is not the most likable person, it's obvious that he is getting all that beating, and Bin-woo also heard that he used to be a real delinquent. Since Bin-woo doesn't want to get involved, he decides to call the cops. Bin-woo tells the cops that there are some people beating up a boy, but then Bin-woo's eyes land on the guy trying to break Junki's fingers, so he charges at them. Bin-woo manages to push him away and realizes that these guys are from Baekjo High. Bin-woo further tells them that they should have covered their uniforms instead of their faces as their school names are engraved on their buttons. When Bin-woo reveals that he even saw their names on the name tag they are wearing, the thugs runs away. Bin-woo tells Junki that he better take care of his hands as he might have to give up archery if he breaks a finger. Junki replies that that is something he wants because he is sick and tired of archery. Bin-woo asks why he is still doing it when he hates it the most, but Junki asks him why he quit when he liked it so much. Before leaving the area, Junki asks Bin-woo how he knows the names of those thugs from earlier. In response, Bin-woo admits that he is only bluffing because he cannot magically see what people are hiding inside their pockets. After that, Bin-woo arrives late to his class and immediately gets scolded by the teacher for showing up late even though he is supposed to be the class president. Once the lesson begins, Bin-woo still cannot focus properly because his mind keeps wandering back to archery, and it feels like he can almost see bows and targets everywhere around him. Later on, Eun-dong and the others continue freaking out after hearing that Bin-woo's hand is badly burned and that he still uses the bow while injured during the match. One of them even questions why Bin-woo does not simply stop the match earlier, calling his actions somewhat pathetic. However, Gong-hyun explains that Bin-woo keeps going because he desperately wants to win no matter what happens. Back inside the classroom, Gong-hyun walks over to Bin-woo and tells him that his personal goal is to someday become a national athlete. He then asks Bin-woo what his own dream or goal is. However, before Bin-woo can answer the question, the chairman suddenly calls him to the office. When Bin-woo arrives at the office, the chairman immediately starts talking about the match he has with Junki the previous day. She asks Bin-woo if he purposely uses her son because he used to be famous back in the past. Bin-woo becomes confused and says he has no idea what she is talking about, so the chairman explains further by saying that she hears many rumors about him. According to those rumors, Bin-woo is known as the boy who brings bad luck, and she believes he should stay away from everyone else at the school. Hearing that, Junki tells his mother to stop saying such things because the match is only a simple fight between students. However, instead of calming down, His mother scolds him even more and says this weak attitude is exactly why he keeps losing all the time. Just then, the coach suddenly arrives at the office, and the chairman immediately asks him if he knows Bin-woo personally. The coach calmly replies that Bin-woo is actually the record-breaking prodigy archer that many people once talked about. However, the chairman says she is not talking about his archery skills and instead means the rumors about him being a symbol of misfortune. In response, the coach tells the chairman that she cannot keep protecting her son inside a safe bubble forever because one day that bubble will burst the moment strong wind hits it. He then explains that Junki needs to learn how to face and control that wind himself, and says this is something he always teaches all of his students. In addition to that, the coach explains that if she truly wants her son to grow stronger, then she has to let him face that harsh wind by himself instead of always protecting him, and only then will she realize that she actually makes the right choice. After saying that, the coach finally announces that Bin-woo is now officially a member of the archery team, which completely surprises Bin-woo after hearing it. The chairman becomes even more furious at those words, but Bin-woo calmly says that if she truly wants Silla High's archery team to become the best team possible, then they absolutely need someone like him on the team. Before leaving the office, the coach tells both boys to quietly follow him outside. Once they are outside, the coach tells them to gather at the archery range after classes end for the day, and he specifically warns Junki that disciplinary action will be taken if he continues skipping training sessions again and again. After that, the coach turns toward Bin-woo and encourages him by saying that he does a great job today and that he is genuinely proud of him. Hearing those words causes Bin-woo to tear up emotionally, and he finally agrees to stay as part of the archery team. Later that same day, Bin-woo goes to Gung-hyun and tells him that his true dream is to someday become a national athlete. The next day, Bin-woo introduces himself to the rest of the archery team, and the members can barely believe that he is actually joining their team after all this time. The coach also explains to everyone that Bin-woo is starting archery again after taking a very long break, and he hopes the rest of the team will help support him as he gets used to everything again. After that, the coach asks Bin-woo if he already has his own bow to use for practice. Since Bin-woo says that he does not own one anymore, the coach explains that the team cannot afford to buy him a brand new bow right now because their budget is very tight. Instead, the coach brings out the same bow Bin-woo uses during his match against Junki and says that he carefully cleans it after that day's match and even replaces the bowstring with a new one. Hearing that makes Bin-woo happy, and he gladly accepts the bow as his own. At the same time, Eun-dong quietly wonders if Bin-woo still remembers her from that day almost 3 years ago, and she also wants to congratulate him for finally joining the archery team. However, just then, Nari suddenly appears nearby, and Bin-woo immediately runs toward her the moment he sees her, which instantly makes Eun-dong feel jealous. The coach then asks the team where Junki is, and the boys reply that he does not show up today because he is probably too embarrassed to come after losing the match against Bin-woo. Meanwhile, Bin-woo waits outside Beach High for the thugs who beat him up the other day because he wants to find out who they really are. Around the same time, Junki notices the archery team from that school practicing nearby and immediately finds them annoying just by looking at them. Yoon-dal soon notices Junki standing there and asks him what happens to his face. However, Junki quickly changes the subject and instead asks why their team is training so seriously today. Yoon explains that they have an important match coming up very soon. At that moment, Junki accidentally drops his phone onto the ground, and when he bends down to pick it up, he suddenly notices one of the boys wearing shoes that look exactly like the shoes worn by one of the thugs from earlier. Meanwhile, back at Silla High, the coach gathers the team together and announces that they are going to have a match against another school soon. The team then learns that their next opponents are actually Beach High. Junki also hears this news from Yoon-dal, and he immediately becomes furious because. However, when the Silla High's team hears that they think that Beach's archery team is known for being the best. Beach High is also part of the top 3 high schools with the best archery team famous for archery, and a lot of national athletes graduated from that school. Bin-woo says that he heard the coach for Beach High's team is an elite archer who started training at a very young age, so their admission process is very selective. The coach says that they look surprised and tells the team that he managed to charm the head coach with his amazing interpersonal skills. The players then talk about how they will get to see Yoon-dal now, and Bin-woo overhears that since Yoon used to be his friend back in the days. Bin-woo then furiously shouts and asks if Yoon-dal still does archery. The player then gets mad as well and tells Bin-woo to lower his voice, and now the coach has to step in to stop both of them. In a flashback, Bin-woo and Yoon are happily going against each other in a match. Yoon is a good archer, but since he is lower rank he is going to shoot first, and the thing he struggles the most is pulling the string too late. Since Yoon-dal takes way too long, the string breaks and injures his eye. With that, Bin-woo wins the gold medal. Back in the present time, the coach explains to Binwoo that the upcoming competition will be a team match where students compete in groups of 3 people. However, after hearing that, Binwoo immediately becomes worried because he feels like nobody would actually want to team up with him. Later that day, a few boys approach Gonghyun and ask him to join their team for the match, but he quickly refuses without hesitation, saying that they do not look like the type of people who could win anything. After that, more students slowly start approaching Gonghyun one after another, hoping to form a team with him, but he manages to reject every single offer that comes his way. Some time later, Binwoo notices that Gonghyun still does not have a team either, and he starts wondering if maybe the two of them could work together. After gathering enough courage, Binwoo finally walks up to Gonghyun and nervously asks if he would like to join his team. Meanwhile, Gonghyun keeps thinking about how Binwoo is the legendary archer who once broke the national record by scoring perfect 10s on every shot. Because of that, Gonghyun tells Binwoo that he will only consider joining his team if Binwoo can shoot a perfect gold shot before the match begins. Hearing that immediately makes Binwoo angry, and he starts saying a bunch of rude and mean things back to him instead. At the same time, Undong and Sora decide to put up a poster on the school board to search for a female archer who can join their team. The following day, the PE teacher approaches the coach saying he is working hard these days and he is getting off later than usual. The coach says that they are having a match against Beach High this weekend, so he is analyzing the team members. The coach also says that his goal is to get the team to cooperate with each other more than before, and as long as they successfully work together, winning or losing the match doesn't matter. The following morning, Gonghyun goes to the field early to practice, but he hears the sound of someone shooting arrows. It turns out, Junki is practicing, so Gonghyun joins him as well. At the same time, Binwoo is also running around the track and the 3 of them continue with their practice. Later, a girl approaches Sora and Undong saying she wants to apply for an archery club. It turns out, she has never played or learned archery before and only seen it on TV. Sora gives her the bow and tells her to give it a try. The girl then shoots the arrow that surprises both girls, and Sora asks her if she has played a sports before because most people can't even pull the bowstring because it's so stiff. The girl says that she has played 2 years of handball, 2 years of soccer and a little bit of volleyball recently. Undong quickly says that she is accepted, but Sora starts arguing with her and both of them continue to argue for a while. Sora decides that Undong is going to teach her the basics, and turns out they are the same age. First, Undong tells her to put on protective gear as safety comes first. She also says that just because she knows how to pull a bowstring doesn't mean she has mastered archery. Undong says that she is first going to teach the girl the most basic stance used in archery. She then explains that a person should stand with their feet shoulder-width apart while preparing to shoot. After hearing that, the girl asks Undong if her eyesight is actually very weak because she believes people need really good eyesight to become skilled at archery. She also wonders how Undong manages to overcome a weakness like that. However, Undong calmly explains that she never once thinks of her eyesight as a weakness and says that having perfect eyesight is not what truly matters in archery. Later that same day, the chairman meets up with the coach and offers him some tea that she personally likes very much. After that, the chairman starts talking about how Beach High is famous for having an excellent archery team, and she even mentions that one of their former students became an Olympic gold medalist. In response, the coach says that the most important thing in a match is the process and effort rather than only focusing on the final result. However, the chairman disagrees and firmly says that what she truly wants is for their team to win. She then warns the coach that if he fails to bring good results, she will have no choice but to find a new coach who can lead the team to better victories. After the meeting ends, the coach starts wondering if it is really possible for their team to defeat Beach High with the current members they have right now. Back at the training ground, Junki meets the glasses guy inside the washroom so they can talk about the team situation for the upcoming match. The glasses guy explains that this competition is a team match, which means Junki cannot participate unless he manages to form a team of 3 members first. After hearing that, Junki tries asking if he can join the glasses guy's team instead, but the guy quickly replies that he already forms a team with other people. At the same time, the coach approaches Gonghyun and asks if he finally manages to find a team yet because there is not much time left before the match begins. The coach also warns him that he needs to act more gentle and friendly toward others, otherwise he will end up getting left out by everyone again. After that, the coach walks over to Binwoo and tells him that he should become more confident in himself because only then will other people want to team up with him. The coach also mentions that he comes up with a special training method that might help Binwoo improve even more. Later that evening, Binwoo shows Nari the footage from his old match where he breaks the national archery record. She wonders how he got this footage from, and Binwoo says that the coach said he wanted him to remember that day in detail. However, Binwoo says that he does not remember that day clearly because it's the day he quit archery. Nari tells him that he needs to move on because what happened that day wasn't his fault. Binwoo says that wounds leave scars, and the coach also said he needs to overcome his trauma by remembering that day. Finally, on the fourth day, everyone continues practicing hard for the upcoming match, including the new female archer who recently joined the team. Soon, it becomes the night before the big match, and the coach walks over to Binwoo, who is quietly standing alone while looking at the beautiful night sky. The coach asks Binwoo how his special training goes, and Binwoo calmly replies that he has watched the video 2 times already. Hearing that, the coach asks if watching the footage only twice is really enough for proper training. However, Binwoo confidently says that even watching it once is enough for him, which completely surprises the coach. After that, Binwoo picks up his bow because he wants to test everything he learns during the past few days. He slowly grabs the bow, takes his shooting position, and carefully prepares his stance before releasing the arrow. The moment the arrow flies forward, the coach becomes completely stunned by the shot and once again starts thinking of Binwoo as a true archery prodigy. Later on, the coach gathers Binwoo, Gonghyun, and Junki together because they are the only students left who still do not belong to any team. The coach then tells the 3 boys to form a team together, and surprisingly, all of them quickly agree to it without arguing much. After that, the whole Silla High team arrives at the venue for their match against Beach High. Everyone is shocked when they see Beach High's campus because it looks on a completely different level, and because of that, many of them feel so nervous that they could not even sleep properly the night before. At that moment, Sara tells the coach that Undong needs to go to the washroom because she is dealing with irritable bowel syndrome and is not feeling well. Hearing this makes Junki lose his temper, and he angrily tells them to stop acting so weak, even saying that if she is too scared then she should just quit the match. Soon after, the team enters the stadium, and Coach Jung speaks with Beach High's coach, saying that he was not informed earlier that the match would be held indoors. In response, Beach's coach asks him what he thinks is the most important thing in archery. Coach Jung answers that there are many important factors in the sport. However, the other coach disagrees and says he is wrong, explaining that mindset is the most important thing in archery. He adds that with the right mindset, players can even overcome strong advantages like home ground pressure. Coach Jung tries to tell him that there are far more things to archery than just that, but the other coach gets furious saying he can't teach him that when he won 3 gold medals. Meanwhile, the Silla High team also becomes confused by the indoor environment and starts thinking that the other team has a clear advantage because of it. After that, the coach tells them that an indoor match cannot test how faithful they are to the basics of archery, and he reminds them that fundamentals matter more than conditions. Suddenly, the audience starts filling the stadium to watch the match, increasing the pressure even more, and the coach encourages the team again by telling them that they must give their best in this situation no matter what happens. Binwoo thinks that he is actually fine with an indoor match since there is less wind and tension, which might make it easier for him to focus and shoot. He also feels relieved when he realizes that Yoon is not competing in this match. However, when Binwoo turns around, he is completely shocked to see Yoon Dal standing there. Binwoo quickly asks if Yoon's eye injury is okay, and Yoon replies that he is doing fine and tells Binwoo not to worry about it because it has nothing to do with bad luck. After meeting Yoon, Binwoo starts losing his focus and feels mentally shaken, so Junki immediately shouts at him to snap back to reality and get his senses together. Finally, it's time for the match to start, and Undong is going first along with Sunmi and Sora. Silla High wins the toss and they are now going to shoot first. It turns out, Undong has performance anxiety, and in order to overcome her nervousness, she used to repeat a certain phrase written on her routine card like a spell before every match. That phrase is "she can do it," and these were the words she heard for the first time by Binwoo. Since she wants to hear those words again, she goes to Binwoo and tells him to say that to her. When Binwoo says that she feels encouraged once again and wants to give her best this time, Undong gets back to her position, and while carrying the bow she tries best to tell herself that there is nothing to worry about and everything will be fine after the first shot. When Undong shoots the shot it gets to 8 points, which is quite good. Now, it is Sunmi's turn to shoot, and Undong quietly hopes that she performs well since this is the very first official match of her career. Sunmi feels relieved that the competition is being held indoors because she believes indoor conditions are much easier to deal with. She also thinks that archery is a sport where teamwork does not really matter much, and because of that, she feels like she does not even need to directly fight against her opponents. Surprisingly, Sunmi manages to score 8 points with her shot, which gives the team some confidence. After that, it becomes Sora's turn, and everyone knows that she is skilled enough to even receive scouting offers from Joseon High School because of her talent. Meanwhile, Bin-woo becomes angry after realizing that Beach-hye is clearly underestimating Silla-hye and does not even bother bringing their strongest players for this match. Soon after, Sora calmly takes her shot and successfully scores a perfect 10 points. Right after that, it becomes Beach-hye's turn, and the girl from their team also lands a perfect 10 points, immediately surprising everyone watching the match. When the next player from Beach steps into position, she actually feels very nervous because most people in her life always look down on her and never expect much from her. She then releases her shot and only manages to score 8 points, which makes Eun-dong and the others feel happy and relieved. After that, the third archer from Beach prepares for her turn, and many people in the audience think they recognize her from several competitions before. Everyone already knows that she shoots very well, but since she is only part of the second league, they begin wondering just how strong the rest of Beach's players must really be. However, the girl calmly fires her arrow and lands a direct 10 points. Soon, it becomes Eun-dong's turn again, and when she shoots this time, she scores 9 points. The match then continues with both teams taking turns one after another, and surprisingly, the girls from Silla-hye are performing much better than expected. While watching the other side closely, Eun-dong starts feeling that something about Beach's team seems strange because none of the players are talking to each other at all. During the second set, Eun-dong starts feeling much more confident because there is no wind inside the stadium, and she also feels like the first set helps her body loosen up and adjust to the match better. Eun-dong then takes her shot and scores 9 points. After that, it becomes Sunmi's turn, but she only manages to score 7 points and immediately feels disappointed in herself because of it. When Sora takes her turn, she scores 9 points, and seeing that makes Sunmi feel even more pressured because she starts thinking that she is only dragging the team down. After that, the blonde girl from the opposing team shoots an 8-point shot. While standing there, the girl starts thinking that if things continue like this, she might get left behind by her own teammates, so she needs to pull herself together quickly. However, when she takes another shot, she once again scores only 8 points. Because of that, she becomes depressed and starts believing that she now has the lowest score on her entire team. Around that time, Sora tells the others that Beach-hye's average score is around 9 points, and they still have 2 shots remaining in the current set. At that moment, Eun-dong notices that the second archer from Beach is trembling badly in fear while desperately telling herself that she absolutely needs to score a 10-point shot. After watching her carefully, Eun-dong tells the girls that the second archer is definitely going to score a 10 this time. In the end, Eun-dong's guess turns out to be correct because the girl successfully lands a perfect 10 on her very next shot. Finally, the set comes to an end with Beach-hye taking the win, and now the third set is about to begin. Eun-dong starts thinking that this will probably be their final set, so she decides that she wants to give everything she has because she does not want to leave the match filled with regret later. When Eun-dong takes her shot, she manages to score 9 points. However, instead of feeling satisfied, she becomes even more frustrated because she truly wants to score a perfect 10. After that, it becomes Sunmi's turn to shoot. Before she takes her shot, the coach tells Sunmi not to overthink a single arrow too much and simply trust herself enough to shoot naturally. Sunmi then carefully prepares herself by getting into the correct form and posture while aiming directly at the target. However, when she finally releases the arrow, she only scores 6 points. At that moment, Sunmi completely starts losing confidence and begins wondering what is wrong with her. She feels like the longer she holds and pulls the bowstring while trying harder to improve her shot, the farther the target seems to move away from her instead. Her thoughts slowly become darker as she even starts believing that she is the weakest member and biggest problem on the entire team. It turns out that Sunmi has been bullied for most of her life, with people constantly calling her slow and saying that she has no real play style at all. While she struggles with those painful thoughts during the match, Sora quietly walks past her and tells her that she still does a good job. After that, Sora takes her shot and scores 9 points before trying to encourage Sunmi again. Sunmi then asks Sora if she is not angry about the fact that she scored only 6 points earlier. However, Sora calmly replies that she does not care whether Sunmi scores a 6 or a 10 because she only focuses on improving her own score during the match. At that moment, Eun-dong finally realizes what feels so strange about the girls from the other team. She notices that the girls become nervous and tense whenever one of their teammates scores a perfect 10, but strangely, the lower their teammate's score becomes, the happier they seem to act. After that, Eun-dong finishes her turn, and now it is Sunmi's turn to shoot once again. Sunmi keeps thinking that this is probably her final chance, so she absolutely cannot afford to make another mistake. However, she becomes so lost inside her own thoughts and pressure that she does not even realize there is barely any time remaining. In the end, Sunmi releases her arrow almost without thinking clearly, and at that exact moment, Sora quickly rushes into position before firing her own shot as fast as she possibly can. Surprisingly, Sora manages to score 9 points with that shot. After the round ends, Sunmi apologizes to everyone and sadly says that she knows she could have performed much better than this. However, the coach encourages her by saying that she still does a decent job and that he can clearly see she still has the desire to improve and become stronger. Throughout the entire match, Undong stays focused on the basics and fundamentals of archery, while Sora does a great job leading the team during difficult moments, and Sunmi also performs fairly well considering that this is her very first official match. In the end, the girls from Beach High win the match, but despite losing, the girls from Silla High end up being the happiest because of how hard they fight together. After the match, the coach notices the archer from the other team who has the lowest score sitting all alone quietly in a corner, and he starts wondering why she looks so isolated from everyone else. Soon after that, it becomes Yisu, Youngmin, and Namju's turn to compete for Team Silla, and the boys become determined to take revenge for the girls' loss. Around that time, the coach asks the team where Ji-young is, and Yisu jokingly replies that Ji-young is actually helping the team the most by not showing up there at all. Since the boys' match is going to begin shortly, Junki tells Namju that if he loses this match, he is going to be off the ace list. The team then talks about how there are so many people watching the match right now. Yoon Dal then calls out his teammate Maru and encourages him, telling him to remember their special training. The match starts off with Beach going first since they win the toss. The first player of their team scores a 10, and now it's Maru's turn, who is quite nervous. He thinks about how hard he trained for this moment, and when he shoots he gets 10 points as well. When their last player also gets a 10, the Silla coach gets stunned since they got a head start. He also thinks that Yisu has a small build, but he has muscles strong enough for a good shot. There may be no wind advantages here, but he's an archer who has the basics down. Yisu shoots the archer and gets 9 points, and then it's Jungmin's turn, who has the lowest record in the team. He manages to get 9 points as well, and now it's Namju's turn to be the captain of the team. Surprisingly, Namju ends up being the only player on Silla's side who manages to score a perfect 10 points. After that, it becomes Beach High's turn, and their players continue shooting very well one after another. However, when it becomes Maru's turn, he once again starts getting trapped inside his own thoughts. He desperately wants to show everyone that he is no longer a dead weight dragging the team down, so he takes his time, carefully settles himself, releases his shot, and lands a clean and perfect 10. Watching that happen makes Yoon Dal think to himself that all the brutal and grueling training he has been putting Maru through is finally starting to show up and pay off in a real way. After that, it becomes Team Silla's turn to step up again, and they manage to put together several really solid scores throughout the round without falling apart. When everything plays out, Namju ends up being the only player left who absolutely needs to come away with at least a 9 in order for their team to pull even with the other side and force a tie. Namju then draws the bowstring all the way back, takes a breath, releases the arrow, and somehow manages to land another perfect 10, which sends him over the edge as he lets out a loud shout of pure excitement right on the spot. Then out of nowhere, the entire audience packed inside the stadium breaks out into loud and thunderous applause, but all of it is directed toward Beach High, which catches every single person from Silla High completely off guard and leaves them stunned. Seeing how the crowd is turning, the coach wastes no time and quickly pulls the team together, telling them not to let the noise and energy of the crowd get inside their heads and mess with their focus, and that they should simply treat this match like any other day of training and nothing more. Right around that same moment, Yisu suddenly spots Ji-young sitting somewhere among the people in the audience, and the second she lays eyes on him she becomes absolutely furious just from seeing him there. 3 days earlier, Ji-young tells Yisu that he receives a crazy message from someone using the name Archerboy online. According to Ji-young, the person asks him to help out during Silla High's weekend match against Beach High by doing some kind of noise training. Yisu becomes confused after hearing that, so Ji-young explains further by saying that the guy simply wants him to cheer loudly during the match and make the stadium as noisy as possible. When Ji-young asks what he would get in return for helping, the mysterious person says that he will even pay him cash for it, which sounds completely insane to both of them. After hearing everything, Yisu firmly warns Ji-young not to show up at the match tomorrow and ruin things like that. Back in the present, Yisu finally realizes that this entire situation is actually part of Ji-young's plan from the beginning, and he starts thinking that Ji-young will never leave him alone if he ever discovers who Archerboy really is. Because Yisu keeps thinking about all of this instead of focusing on the competition, he completely ruins his shot and misses badly. Right after missing, Yisu suddenly curses loudly without thinking. Hearing that shocks his teammate, who wonders why Yisu suddenly curses at him, and because of the confusion, he also loses focus and messes up his own shot as well. Now it is Namju's turn, and he starts thinking that there is no way for them to win the set unless he manages to score at least a 9-point shot, which feels extremely difficult under all this pressure. However, Namju's next shot only scores 7 points, and seeing that immediately worries the coach because he feels that Yisu's unstable performance is starting to negatively affect the entire team. After that, the opposing team takes their turn and manages to score 9 points. Seeing the growing score difference, the coach starts thinking that they are already falling too far behind because the gap is becoming almost impossible to overcome. At the same time, he keeps wondering what exactly is bothering Yisu so much during the match. When the coach follows the direction Yisu keeps staring toward, he finally notices that Ji-young is sitting among the audience members watching the game. The coach then remembers hearing many rumors about how the other team's head coach is willing to do absolutely anything to win matches, but after seeing this situation, he realizes things are even worse than he originally expected. After that, the coach walks over to the other side of the stadium and loudly starts cheering for Team Silla in order to encourage them. During the third set, Yisu begins performing even worse than Youngmin, which shocks everyone watching the match. Meanwhile, Binwoo quietly points out that Yisu is extremely tense right now, and the small shakes in his body are ruining his aim and making it difficult for him to shoot properly. To everyone's surprise, the players from Silla High suddenly switch the shooting order during the match without even discussing it with the coach first. The coach immediately starts thinking that although changing the order during a match is not actually against the rules, archers almost never do something like this because archery is heavily based on mental focus and stability. He also believes that changing the order in the middle of the match is basically the same as admitting that their team is starting to fall apart under pressure. Earlier, before the match continues, Yisu quietly approaches Youngmin and asks if he can shoot first instead of him, which completely confuses Youngmin. Youngmin immediately becomes nervous and starts wondering what will happen if he ends up messing everything up for the team. However, Yisu tells him that even if they fail, it will all be because of Yisu himself anyway. In the end, Youngmin agrees only because Yisu personally asks him to, but deep down he still does not feel confident at all about being the first shooter. Back in the present, Youngmin keeps wondering why he is the only one carrying such a heavy burden during the match. When he finally takes his shot, he only manages to score 7 points, clearly showing everyone that he is feeling intense pressure. Undong starts thinking that they are definitely going to lose the set, and Sora tells her that no team has ever managed to win a match after suddenly changing their shooting order in the middle of it. The coach also realizes that both Youngmin and Yisu are performing terribly right now, which means almost all the pressure is now resting on Namju's shoulders because he is the only one capable of breaking the bad flow affecting the entire team. Surprisingly, when Namju takes his shot, he manages to get a very good score, and everyone quickly realizes that he is the only one who still has not lost his focus under all this pressure. After that, the match continues with the opposing team taking their turn, and one of their players once again scores a perfect 10 points. Seeing this completely confuses Sora and Undong, and they begin wondering who that player really is and how he keeps shooting perfect 10s one after another without failing. At the same time, the coach notices Ji-young quietly leaving the stadium, so he immediately follows him outside to confront him directly. During their conversation, Ji-young tells the coach that the team is only going to lose if he stays there any longer, and he also announces that he is quitting the team completely. In the end, the boys from Silla High lose their match, but despite the disappointing result, the coach still tries his best to encourage them and lift their spirits afterward. Finally, it becomes time for Binwa's team to face Yundal's team in the last match, and the coach tells everyone that this will be their final match of the day. Before the match begins, Gonghyun and Junki start arguing with each other about their shooting positions in the order. The coach first decides to place Binwoo as the second shooter, but Binwoo quickly complains and says that he always used to be the final shooter in the past. Seeing the three boys unable to agree with each other, the coach finally tells them to settle everything with a simple game of rock-paper-scissors instead. After that, the positions are finally decided, with Gonghyun becoming the first shooter, Junki taking the second position, and Binwoo getting the final spot exactly the way he wants. Soon after, Junki walks over to the players from the other team and boldly tells them that if his team wins, he is going to hit each one of them once, so they should agree to that deal now. However, the other players only start laughing at him, thinking he is trying to act like some kind of comedian. Junki then says that if their team loses instead, the other players can beat him up just like they do before, which suddenly makes them nervous after hearing his serious tone. After that, Team Silla wins the toss, and it finally becomes Gonghyun's turn to shoot first. Even though loud cheers for the opposing team continue echoing throughout the stadium, Gonghyun does not lose even a little bit of focus or motivation and calmly fires a perfect gold shot. The coach starts thinking that this result is not even surprising anymore because Gonghyun is skilled enough to shoot perfect gold shots from almost anywhere without difficulty. After that, it becomes Junki's turn to shoot, and memories of all the beatings and humiliation he receives from the opposing team begin rushing through his mind. Because of those emotions, Junki focuses completely and manages to score a perfect 10-point shot. Finally, it becomes Binwoo's turn, and he starts thinking about how badly he wants to prove to the entire world once again that he is truly the prodigy of archery everyone once talks about. In a flashback, the coach tells Binwoo that the true purpose of this match is not simply about winning or losing. Instead, he explains that Binwoo needs to let go of all the heavy feelings inside him and shoot arrows that will help him release everything holding him back. Back in the present, Nari finally arrives at the venue as well, but she cannot find where the stadium actually is, causing her to become frustrated and angry at Binwoo for not explaining things properly. Just then, a silver-haired boy suddenly approaches her, and the two of them begin walking toward the stadium together. While they are heading there, Nari asks the boy for his name, but he refuses to answer properly and simply tells her that she can only call him by the name Archer Boy. After that, the two of them quickly rush inside the stadium and feel relieved after realizing that the match is still not over yet. Since the first set already ends, both teams currently have equal scores. Nari then becomes surprised after noticing that Gonghyun is also playing in the match because she knows that he becomes a candidate for the national team after having only 2 years of experience in archery. Since she cannot remember his name properly, Archer Boy explains everything to her and says that Gonghyun is a rookie ace who wins gold medals everywhere he competes. He also explains that Gonghyun's greatest strength is his emotional stability because he never hesitates while shooting and always releases his arrows calmly without losing focus under pressure. After Gonghyun finishes his turn, it becomes Junki's turn to shoot, and Nari starts wondering why Binwoo would ever choose to team up with someone who once injures him badly before. However, Archer Boy tells her to carefully look into Junki's eyes because they look exactly like the eyes of a predator hunting its prey. Finally, it becomes Binwoo's turn to shoot, and Nari immediately gets excited after seeing him step forward toward the line. She then tells Archer Boy that Binwoo only recently starts practicing archery again and that this is actually his first proper match after being away from the sport for such a long time, so she sincerely hopes he performs well today. The silver-haired Archer Boy quickly recognizes Binwoo as the legendary archer who once scores perfect gold shots with every single arrow during his final match and even creates a brand new national record because of it. Archer Boy then admits that he really wants to see Binwoo return to the amazing form he once had in the past. Soon after, Binwoo releases his arrow, but it only lands on 8 points. After seeing the result, Archer Boy calmly says that it will probably take some more time before Binwoo can fully return to his best condition again. However, Nari becomes annoyed at him for saying something like that so casually. A moment later, Nari asks Archer Boy which team he is actually supporting during this match. In response, he says that he always stands with the winning side and refuses to choose one team over the other. He further explains that he believes archery is basically like a battlefield where only the strongest side survives. However, Nari completely disagrees with that idea because she believes archery is supposed to be about training the mind, improving the body, and respecting fair play above everything else. Afterward, it becomes Gonghyun's turn to shoot once again, but the moment he releases his arrow, it suddenly snaps in half in the middle of the match, shocking everyone watching the competition. The coach immediately rushes over and asks Gonghyun what just happened and whether he is still able to continue shooting properly, but Gonghyun stays completely silent and does not respond at all. The players from the other team are also shocked because they have never seen an arrow break like that during an actual match before. Because of this, some of them begin believing that the rumors about Binwoo bringing bad luck might actually be true, and they start warning each other to be careful around him. Some of the beach players even begin taking pictures of Binwoo because of the strange situation, which instantly makes both Junki and the coach furious at them for acting like that. At that moment, Gonghyun calmly fires another shot and says that everyone should just move on already instead of making a big deal out of it. However, it turns out that Gonghyun intentionally shoots his arrow directly into Beach High's target instead of his own. The coach quickly tries to go retrieve the arrow, but Yoon suddenly stops him and says they should leave the arrow exactly where it is. Yoon then confidently says that his players will simply place their own arrows right on top of Gonghyun's arrow instead. Soon after that, it becomes Junki's turn to shoot, and he feels even more nervous than before because he cannot stop worrying that his own arrow might also suddenly break during the match. While watching him, the coach thinks that Junki probably loses his focus for a moment, but he also believes that Junki will not have much trouble regaining his concentration again. However, the coach knows that the situation is completely different for Binwoo because his mental state is much worse right now. Soon after that, Binwoo tries to take his shot, but because he cannot focus properly at all, the arrow flies completely outside the target. Afterward, it becomes Beechai's turn to shoot, and one of their players also feels extremely nervous because both the coach and Yoon want him to split Gunghyun's arrow perfectly. However, the player ends up missing the target completely, although the team still has 2 more chances left to succeed. In the end, Beechai fails to split the arrow like they plan, but despite that, they still manage to win the match overall. After the round ends, the coach from Beechai requests a 5-minute break for the players. Around that time, Undong notices that Binwoo is quietly starting to fall apart mentally because he keeps thinking that maybe everyone is right about him and that he truly only brings bad luck wherever he goes. After that, Yoon walks over to Binwoo and quietly tells him to let it go, explaining that those are the same words Binwoo once said to him whenever he was having a difficult time in the past. Yoon then tells Binwoo that he can understand exactly what he is feeling just by looking into his eyes, and says that right now, Binwoo is clearly suffering inside. He continues by saying that Binwoo should stop living while carrying so much pain because nobody wants to see him like this anymore, not even his own parents. However, deep down, Yoon is not saying these things to comfort Binwoo at all, and he is actually trying to mentally break Binwoo down even more before the match ends. Just then, Junki and Gunghyun suddenly arrive beside Binwoo and immediately ask Yoon what he is trying to do there. Junki instantly starts cursing at Yoon and angrily tells him to get lost, even saying that he is the #1 hater of Beechai. Right after that, the coach also appears and firmly tells Yoon to return to his seat. Once Yoon finally leaves the area, the coach quietly tells Binwoo not to let any of those words get into his head. Soon after that, the third set continues, and both Gunghyun and Junki manage to score strong points right from the start. After their turns end, it finally becomes Binwoo's turn to shoot once again. Everyone inside the stadium becomes excited to watch him because this could end up being the final and most important set of the entire match. Archer Boy then tells Nari that Binwoo is the one holding the key to victory in this important match. However, when Binwoo prepares to shoot, he struggles to properly focus on the target because the thoughts about being called a symbol of bad luck keep filling his mind again and again. While Binwoo continues struggling with those painful thoughts, the coach suddenly shouts at him and tells him to let go of everything through his arrow. The coach also tells him that the boy who supposedly brings bad luck does not exist there anymore, because standing in front of them now is only a boy who is starting archery once again from the beginning. Hearing those words completely fires Binwoo up emotionally, and he decides that he wants to shoot like a phoenix rising again. Binwoo then firmly grabs the bow, pulls back the string with all his strength, and finally releases the arrow, scoring 7 points. At that moment, Binwoo starts realizing what the coach is truly trying to teach him all this time. He understands that the coach is not simply teaching him how to win matches, but also teaching him about purpose over results, learning how to let go, overcoming misfortune, and finding happiness again. At the same time, Archer Boy also realizes something important himself. He understands that Binwoo is not actually the person holding the key to victory in this match at all, because the true key to victory is their coach. After that, the match continues, and Yoon asks the coach what they should do about the twins who fail to split the arrow properly during the round. The coach then asks which one of the two brothers performs worse and should be considered the loser. However, Yoon replies that the twins always share the same fate because they somehow manage to get the exact same score in every single match they play together. Hearing that, the coach calmly says that both of them will have to leave the team then. Since there are still plenty of open spots and chairs left, the coach tells Yoon that he will allow him to decide what should happen to the twins because he is the captain of the team. After that, the coach starts talking about Gunghyun, saying that he already knows how skilled he is at hiding his emotions and maintaining a perfect poker face during matches. Yoon agrees and says that Gunghyun is currently the archer receiving the most attention from everyone lately. However, Yoon also says that they still need to wait and see whether Gunghyun will truly become the next great master archer because many talented prodigies in archery suddenly lose their skills over time, and according to him, that is simply the cruel nature of the sport itself. The people there also think it is a waste that Gunghyun attends Silla High because they believe his talent is being wasted there, especially since he refuses to receive coaching from anyone except Coach Young. After that, the conversation shifts toward the chairman of Silla High's son, whom they describe as a completely useless troublemaker. After that, Junki walks up to take his shot, but once again the crowd starts loudly cheering for Beech High in an attempt to distract him during his turn. Junki quickly realizes that the audience stays completely quiet while Gunghyun is shooting, but the moment it becomes his turn, they suddenly begin making noise on purpose to throw him off. Meanwhile, the PE teacher starts thinking that the third set will basically be over if Beach successfully lands all 3 of their arrows. He also knows that Coach Young will most likely lose his job if Beach wins this match, and he honestly does not want that to happen because he feels like he has not met a coach as passionate and dedicated as him in a very long time. Since the PE teacher is talking with the chairman on a phone call at that moment, he suddenly decides to hang up the call. In the end, Silla High manages to finish the third set successfully, and now both teams are tied once again. Right after that, the PE teacher steps forward and loudly shouts at the boys that Coach Young is going to lose his job if they fail to win this match. Hearing this shocks the coach, and he immediately asks the PE teacher why he would suddenly say something like that in front of everyone. However, the teacher replies that he simply cannot stay quiet anymore because the team needs at least one victory if they want any chance of persuading the chairman to keep Coach Young. After hearing all of this, Bin-woo becomes completely fired up because he realizes that if they lose this round, the coach who believes in them so much is going to get fired. Afterward, Gong-hyun steps up for his turn, and because of the heavy pressure of possibly causing the coach to get fired, he manages to shoot a 9 for the first time in this match. Next, it becomes Junki's turn, and he thinks to himself that he does not really like the coach, but at the same time he dislikes his mother even more for controlling things her own way. With those mixed feelings inside him, Junki releases his arrow and scores a perfect 10, which immediately makes the coach realize that he has finally regained his focus and is back on track. Finally, it becomes Binwoo's turn, and the crowd once again starts cheering loudly for Beach High in an attempt to break his concentration. However, Bin-woo tries his best to block out the noise and focus only on aiming at something he feels he can reach. While preparing, Bin-woo carefully remembers everything he observed from Gong-hyun earlier, including the position of his ankle, the angle of his shoulders, and the exact timing of his release. Since he studies all of it closely, Bin-woo decides to copy Gong-hyun's form as precisely as possible. In the end, Bin-woo successfully shoots a 9-point arrow. Watching this, the Shark Boy thinks that Bin-woo might be reborn as a stronger archer as long as there is even a small spark left inside him that can reignite his talent. Yoon also starts thinking that Silla High has changed a lot compared to before, and the coach believes that the fear of losing him as their coach is what is now pushing the players to perform better than ever. Coach Young then thinks that they have 3 shots remaining for this set now, and coach. After that, it becomes Gong-hyun's turn once again, and because he is taking longer than usual before shooting, the PE teacher starts freaking out nervously. However, the coach calmly tells him not to worry because Gong-hyun has never scored anything lower than a 9 during important moments. Suddenly, Gong-hyun releases his shot and lands a perfect 10 points. Right after that, Bin-woo also manages to score a strong shot, causing Silla High's overall performance to suddenly improve by a lot. Now it becomes Beach High's turn, and because their first player only scores 9 points, the remaining 2 players are forced to score perfect 10s if they want to stay ahead. However, both of those players end up scoring low points as well, which causes the total score of Silla High and Beach High to become completely even. With the situation now changing dramatically, everyone realizes that the match will go into a shoot-off if both teams finish the 5th set with the same score. After that, Yoon gathers the 3 players who are going next and tells them that the entire team is counting on them to win this important match. He also reminds them that their coach works hard to make today's match happen because he wants them to rise higher in the rankings. Meanwhile, Coach Young quietly notices that Bin-woo has become completely serious now, and he knows from experience that whenever Bin-woo becomes this deeply focused and immersed, something incredible usually happens that day. One of the Beach players stands there and thinks to himself that he never expected this match to drag all the way out to a 5th set. On top of that, he is seriously stressed out about the possibility of getting bumped down to the 3rd league if his team ends up losing, and his mind drifts back to the dirty things he had to do just to get into the league in the first place. It turns out that he is actually one of the guys who was directly involved in jumping and beating up Junki. The memory takes him back to the moment when he went to Yoon and told him that Junki and the other guy had figured out that they were from Beach High, and Yoon completely loses it when he hears that. Yoon then settles down and tells them that he is pretty sure the coach is going to move them up to the 1st league. They are caught completely off guard by that and cannot wrap their heads around why the coach would do something like that without even putting them through a test first. Yoon then breaks it down for them and explains that the coach is not going to make a move like that out in the open right away since there are too many eyes on the situation, but if they go out and put up a strong performance in this match, they are going to land themselves in the 1st league without having to worry about getting ranked down for the next 6 months. Back in the present, the guy steps up, draws his arrow, and manages to land a clean 10. When the next archer arrives, he is also nervous because he never thought their coach would trust them like that. Surprisingly, he shoots the arrow and manages to get a 10 as well. When the last player on the other team steps up, he also shoots a 10, which makes their coach feel like the team is really starting to come together and improve. Next up is Gonghyun, and just like always, he knocks down a 10 without breaking a sweat, and Junki follows right behind him and also lands a 10, which means everything now comes down to Binwoo. He steps up to the line with the thought running through his head that he is going to lose the match unless he manages to pull off a 10. But then, in a moment that nobody sees coming, Binwoo brings the arrow up to his lips, kisses it, and lets it fly, and it lands a 10. After seeing that, the shark boy leans over to Nari and tells her that he does not think Binwoo is just going for a 10, because ever since the 4th set he has been placing every single one of his arrows right next to Gonghyun's. The match rolls on with the other team stepping up, and one of their players comes up short and shoots a 9. His twin walks over and asks him if they are still twins, and the other guy tells him they are, even though deep down he thinks his brother is a total loser. With that, Team Scylla is in a spot where they can only take the win if they shoot 3 10s back to back. Gonghyun and Junki both step up and deliver their 10s, and now the entire match is sitting squarely on Binwoo's shoulders. He draws back and releases, and the arrow flies straight into the target and splits another player's arrow clean down the middle. After that, the PE teacher gets excited because their team manages to score all 10s, and even the Robin Hood shot is counted as a 10 since the arrow also hits a perfect 10-point spot. The team then starts celebrating their victory, and as part of their earlier deal, Junki goes ahead and punches the other team's guy. The next day at Beach High, Yoon is training like crazy from early morning, almost like he is not stopping at all. Not only that, but he also forces some of the boys to keep training for around 8 hours straight. One of the boys complains that they have not eaten any food or even drunk water for 8 hours, and they are not even allowed to go to the bathroom either. It is revealed that Yoon Dal is even more furious because the full video of the match is now uploaded online, and it shows the team getting embarrassed in front of everyone. Meanwhile, the chairman is extremely angry at Coach Young because she finds out that Junki ends up punching a player from the other team. She also says that she went through a lot of trouble to cancel the in-school violence council meeting, and now because of this incident, the council is demanding that Coach Young be removed from the team entirely. Moreover, the chairman tells the coach that she doesn't want this to be blown out of proportion anymore, so he should pack his stuff and leave. In the meantime, the girls are waiting for the coach at the archery club wondering what's taking Coach Young so long. Undong thinks that it's completely unfair if the coach decides to quit like that. Junki and Binwoo end up arguing again, this time about Junki punching that guy in the face. Binwoo says Junki is too full of himself and acts that way because his mom always comes around and saves him whenever things get serious. Before the argument can get worse, the team captain steps in and stops both of them from fighting any further. Shortly after that, the coach arrives and tells the captain that he did a good job by stepping in and stopping the situation at the right time. After that, the team starts asking the coach where he has been and why he was gone for so long, and they also tell him to explain everything that happened in detail. The coach replies that he will tell them about it next time instead, and then he calls Ji-young aside, saying that they need to talk privately. Inside, the coach asks Ji-young if he has resolved everything, and Ji-young replies that he has, and also says that he wants to apologize for everything that happened. He explains that he did all of it because he was trying to earn some money, but there was a misunderstanding since he was actually only there to watch their match. At the same time, the same archer boy enters the chairman's office, and it is clear that the chairman was already expecting him to arrive there. Ji-young then shows the message he receives from Archer Boy to the coach, and the coach also becomes furious after seeing it. The coach warns Ji-young that if he keeps chasing money at such a young age, he will end up getting into serious trouble and might even find himself in handcuffs one day. After saying that, the coach leaves, mentioning that he will make sure they find a better coach for the team soon. However, the entire team accidentally overhears this conversation, and they immediately panic after hearing it. Because of that, they all decide to go and speak directly with the chairman about the situation. Junki takes the lead and enters the office first, but he is shocked when he sees Archer Boy walking out of the chairman's room at that exact moment. Confused and angry, Junki then shouts at the chairman and asks what right she has to interfere with Coach Young's career based only on their match results. He also firmly says that if she decides to remove Coach Young from the school, then the entire team will leave the school together as well. Just then, Coach Young also arrives at the scene, and the chairman tells him that she was deeply moved by everything and has decided to change her decision. She then tells him to continue coaching the team, and promises that she will fully support him and the archery club in every way possible going forward. Later, the boys arrive at their dormitory wondering if it's really theirs since this used to be a private dorm owned by that hag. Junki quickly chooses his bed and says that since he helps them get this place, he believes he deserves at least this much comfort. After that, the other players also return to their rooms to rest, but the coach is still thinking deeply and wondering what exactly the chairman is planning behind all of this. Earlier, when Archer Boy approaches the chairman, he explains that Silla High has been accepted into their teenage archery development program, and because of that, he wants to provide funding for the team. He also adds that the team will receive monthly financial support, and they will even get bonus rewards if they perform well in competitions. In return, all the chairman needs to do is help the archery club grow without losing any members. Later on, the coach gathers everyone and tells them to prepare themselves for much more intense and serious training now that they finally have their own dormitory. He also explains that since their archery club is now officially established, they will need someone to act as the team manager. At that moment, Nari steps forward and tells Binwoo that she wants to take the role of team manager for the club. The next day, a group of students, including Nari, come forward to take part in an interview for the position of team manager. The coach explains to everyone that they will need to pass a series of tests in order to qualify for the role of club manager. Sara then teases Undong, saying that Binwoo's girlfriend, Nari, is also participating in the test, and jokingly tells her that she should pray Nari doesn't end up becoming their manager. The first test begins with a strength challenge. The coach introduces a small piece of equipment to the team and explains that it is used to protect an archer's finger from the bowstring. He then asks everyone to identify its name. The coach also adds that anyone who knows the correct answer must lift a 10 kg dumbbell with one hand and loudly shout out the answer at the same time. Since Nari knows the answer immediately, she confidently rushes forward, picks up the 10 kg dumbbell with one hand, and declares that the correct answer is finger tab. The second test is about seeing how long they can hold up under pressure, and to get through it, they have to cheer on and encourage the archers with as much energy as they can. Since every single one of them passes the second test by bothering and annoying the archers for a full 30 minutes, the coach steps up and tells them that the third test is going to be all about testing how mentally tough they really are. He breaks it down for them by explaining that archery is not just a physical sport but one that really pushes and tests the mind in serious ways, and that in order to get through this test, each person needs to have a strong heart that is able to bounce back quickly after running into any kind of difficulty or setback. The specific challenge they are all given is to walk up to Junki, say something to him, and then hold themselves together and sit through however harsh his reaction and scolding turns out to be. One by one, every single person tries the challenge and fails to make it through, and eventually the only one left who has not yet taken her turn is Nari. Nari ends up getting so far under Junki's skin and bothering him so much that he goes straight to the coach and tells him that she is completely out of her mind. In the end, the coach makes the decision to bring Nari on and give her the role of club manager. Later that same evening, the coach finds himself genuinely surprised when he looks over and sees Nari laughing, talking, and mixing easily with everyone else as though she has always been part of the group. Shortly after that, Nari makes her way over to Undong, who is still stuck in his own head quietly thinking about the fact that Nari has been getting close with Binwoo, and she asks him straight up and sincerely whether the two of them can start fresh and become real friends. The following day, the coach sits down with Nari and lets her know that their school is going to be competing in this year's National Archery Championship. He also asks her if she is willing to step up and help him get everything ready for the competition. On top of that, the coach tells her to go find Binwoo and let him know that he is not going to be part of the lineup for this particular match. Nari pushes back and asks him why, pointing out that Binwoo needs to be out there competing in real matches if he ever wants to make it onto the national team. The coach fires back by bringing up that Binwoo only managed to shoot an average of 7 during their last match against Beach High, and that there is simply no way he is walking away with any medals while he is putting up numbers like that. The coach also opens up and reveals that this upcoming championship is actually the very same match where Binwoo once set his record and also lost his parents, which means that unless Binwoo is fully locked in mentally and has his head in the right place, he is not going to get anything out of being there. Finally, the day of the national championship arrives and the whole team loads up and heads out together to go compete, while Binwoo stays behind in his classroom all by himself, keeping his head down and focusing on studying. That evening, the rain starts coming down and Binwoo spends his time alone out on the range, training by himself. As the days go by, a routine starts to form where the team is out competing in the championship while Binwoo spends his mornings studying alone and his evenings practicing archery by himself. When Binwoo eventually gets back to his dorm, he runs into Gunghyun and asks him what he is doing there since everyone else has already gone back home after the match wrapped up. He then asks Gunghyun how the match went, but Gunghyun does not say a single word and just walks away and slams the door shut behind him. However, right after that, Bin-woo notices 3 gold medals sitting on the desk and puts it all together. Gong-hyun then gets on a call with his family, and his brother comes on and tells him that their father is going to be really happy when he hears about the medals. His brother also reminds Gong-hyun to make sure he is not late to dinner the following day. Later, Gong-hyun heads over to the coach's office and lets him know that he needs to head back home for a little while. Outside, the rest of the guys stand around talking about how Gong-hyun just up and ditched training to go home, but one of them even goes as far as saying that he deserves to be treated that way simply because he is the one bringing home medals. Just then, Nari shows up out of nowhere and gets on their case, telling the boys that they are going to be running 10 full sets and that not a single one of them is stepping foot back in the dorm until every last set is finished. When Gong-hyun finally makes it back home, all the maids rush out to greet him and welcome him like a prince who has finally come back after a long time away. Gong-hyun then goes to find his brother, who is actually in the middle of training at that very moment. When Gong-hyun pulls out his gold medals to show him, his brother laughs it off and makes fun of him by saying that now there is no easy way to get rid of him. After that, Gong-hyun goes to see his father, who is lying sick in bed and is not doing well at all. One of the men standing nearby tells his father that Gong-hyun has really grown up and shaped himself into a genuinely skilled and talented archer. That same man then pulls Gong-hyun aside and tells him that his father is the only person who has any real power to put a stop to Namgung, his brother, but the problem is that his father is in no condition to do anything about it right now. He also brings up the fact that Gong-hyun's sister is basically living completely cut off and locked away after being turned down and denied entry somewhere, and that his second oldest brother is currently sitting behind bars in prison, which makes him genuinely scared and worried that something terrible might end up happening to him as well. Later during dinner, Gong-hyun's brother starts deliberately trying to get under his skin by pointing out that since Gong-hyun is already 17 years old, he is more than old enough to be throwing his name in for a spot on the national archery team, and he offers to let him shoot arrows for a whole month for every single gold medal he brought home. However, Gong-hyun starts thinking that chasing medals is completely pointless at this stage and decides that he wants to change the terms of the deal. He straight up tells Gong-hyun that if he does not manage to become a national champion before the year is over, then he is packing his bags and coming back home to start learning the ins and outs of the family business. Back at the dorm, Bin-woo shows up and walks in carrying a bunch of street food, and Junki immediately gets furious just seeing it brought inside. While the two of them sit down and start digging into the food together, Gong-hyun also walks through the door and pulls up a seat to join them, which makes Junki even more heated and annoyed than he already was. Meanwhile, back in his office, the coach sits down at his desk and finds an invitation letter waiting there for him. The next day, everyone gets ready since they are joining the EAA for their training. The team has no idea why they are even invited in the first place. One of them even mentions that his mind went blank when he read the notification on their group chat. The captain then tells the players not to chicken out since it was an official invite. He also says that this is a great chance for them since there's no need to feel pressured and it's a plus for them as long as they get to meet lots of new archers. While on the bus, Undong asks Sora if Nari is not coming with them, and she says that this training is only for archers so managers can't participate. Later, the team arrives at the venue and Junki feels weird since the place is really crowded. He further says that for some reason, this gathering seems much bigger than the training hosted by the association, and he hears that the secret chairman of the EAA is the owner of a business conglomerate. Bin-woo then notices Shin Gosu from Joseon High and he heard that people call him the overpowered archer. Next, there is Choi Woong from Goryeo High who is also known as the bear because he's the strongest like no one when he shoots. Just then, a girl bursts into the room completely full of energy and introduces herself as Jennifer, the management director of the Elite Archery Association. She tells everyone that she is going to be working alongside them for this special event and that for the entire duration of their stay, every single one of them is going to be kicking off all of their comebacks with the phrase, "I love you." She does not stop there either, as she even turns to the audience and gets them to say that same sentence out loud together. After that, she goes on to explain that her training sessions are going to be unlike anything any of them have ever gone through before, since both former members of the EAA and archers who have never been part of the EAA have all come together in one place for a 20-day in-house training session. She also makes it clear that before any of the actual training gets started, every archer is going to be sitting down for a record match that will be used to sort and group them all into their respective leagues. Every single archer is going to be shooting a total of 15 arrows during the record match, and the whole thing is going to be broken down into 5 sets of 3 arrows each, with everyone shooting from a distance of 70 meters away from the target. On top of all that, once all of their arrows are shot and the scores are in, each archer is going to have to fill out and check off the boxes on their sheet and hand it over to the staff before walking away. From there, everyone is going to be split up and placed into leagues ranging from first to third based entirely on how they scored. Lastly, to make sure that absolutely nobody is left in the dark about where anyone else stands, every archer is going to be required to wear their report card out in the open so that their ranking is visible to everyone around them. Sometime later, everyone gets their rankings handed out and it turns out that Bin-woo lands at number 29, leaving him standing there not really sure whether he should feel good about it or just be upset. He then looks over and gets completely caught off guard when he sees that Yoon is going up against Gung-hyun, and another guy standing nearby says that Yoon probably walked away feeling unsatisfied with how things went between them the last time and wants to come back and settle it properly. Earlier, Jennifer had gathered everyone together and told them straight up that some of them might feel like it is not fair to have their entire ranking decided by just one single match. She then tells them that if they feel that way, the answer is simple, and that is to go out and take someone else's rank by beating them fair and square in a match. The rules themselves are pretty straightforward, since any archer sitting at a lower rank always has the right to walk up and challenge an archer who is sitting at a higher rank above them. She also makes it clear that if the archer with the lower rank comes out on top and wins the match, the two of them are going to swap rankings right then and there. On top of all of that, she explains that the kind of treatment each person receives while they are there is going to be completely different depending on what number they are carrying on their back, and that the archers sitting at the higher rankings are going to be the ones enjoying the best treatment that comes along with earning that spot. Back in the present, Yoon turns to Gung-hyun and asks him straight up if he is absolutely sure he wants to go through with this, because any archer who loses a match that they themselves requested is going to walk away with an X mark stamped right on their scorecard. If he ends up collecting 3 X marks in total, he is getting kicked out completely with no way around it. After that, everyone makes their way over to the main ground and gathers around to watch the match between the two of them play out. Yoon steps up and lays out the rules he wants to go by, explaining that they are going to be playing a total of 3 sets and that the first one to rack up 4 points is going to walk away as the winner. The two of them both come out and shoot 10s right off the bat, but on the second attempt Yoon's aim starts to fall apart on him and he ends up missing the 10. Gung-hyun however follows up so fast and so smoothly that it genuinely catches everyone off guard and leaves them buzzing. Bin-woo watches from the side and points out that Gung-hyun's lightning-quick draws are going to pile the pressure onto Yoon because it is going to force him to keep shooting without ever having enough time to properly settle and prepare himself for the next turn. Yoon steps up again and this time only manages a 9, but Gung-hyun is already one step ahead of him and sends another 10 straight into the target. Seeing that he is simply not able to match where Gung-hyun is right now, Yoon decides to switch things up and suggests that the two of them drop what they are doing and switch over to playing the game of numbers instead. Yoon breaks down the game of numbers by explaining that in order to truly play it, a person has to be able to completely dominate the bow, the arrow, and the target all at the same time. Before he even steps up to take his shot, Yoon casually announces that he is going to hit an 8 at 3 o'clock, which completely catches Gung-hyun off guard as he stands there wondering whether Yoon is seriously planning to miss the 10 on purpose. Yoon then steps up, draws back, and releases, and sure enough the arrow lands exactly on an 8, which shocks just about everyone watching except for Gung-hyun, since the crowd cannot believe that someone like Yoon has never once dropped below a 9 during a record match. Junki stands on the side and wonders out loud whether Yoon is actually getting nervous simply because he happens to be going up against Gung-hyun. Yoon then turns back to Gung-hyun and tells him that he probably finds it uncomfortable to try to dominate anything because his whole life he has been the one getting dominated instead, but Gung-hyun just stands there with a blank look on his face not really getting what Yoon is saying. So Yoon spells it out for him and says plainly that Gung-hyun is being dominated by his own brother. He also points out that pretty much everybody out there only ever locks their eyes on the number 10 on the target, completely ignoring the fact that there are so many other numbers sitting right there on the same board, and honestly he finds that kind of thinking really boring and limiting. The way Yoon sees it, being able to shoot wherever you want and hit exactly what you are aiming for is what free will truly looks like. Before shooting, he says that he is going to miss, and then he misses his shot on purpose, surprising everyone. Gung-hyun reaches out and grabs his bow, and as he does, his mind drifts back to Yoon's words about living life on his own terms and making his own choices. Even with all of that weighing on him, Gung-hyun still manages to land a 10, but Yoon just bursts out laughing at him and tells him that he knows exactly where that shot is coming from. According to Yoon, everything Gung-hyun has ever done boils down to one thing, which is planting arrow after arrow into the 10 over and over again, completely obsessing over hitting that same spot every single time. Yoon goes even further and tells Gung-hyun flat out that he does not actually have any real talent, and that the only reason he is where he is comes down to the fact that he has simply practiced more than everyone else. Watching all of this unfold from the side, Coach Young stands there and thinks to himself that this is not the Gonghyun he knows at all, since he has never once seen him look this nervous or rattled before. Junki then turns to Binwoo and asks him who he thinks is going to come out on top, and Binwoo does not even hesitate before saying straight out that Gonghyun is going to lose. Binwoo breaks it down by explaining that the two of them are actually playing a completely different game from everyone else, one where landing a 10 means absolutely nothing and the whole thing is about who manages to dominate the set. Junki thinks that sounds like a complete joke since nobody actually plays a game like that, and he goes ahead and asks Binwoo how he even knows about something like this in the first place, to which Binwoo casually reveals that he is actually the one who came up with it himself. In a flashback, a young Binwoo and Yoon are out there practicing together, keeping track of how many 10s they are each supposed to shoot. It turns out that Binwoo ends up losing to Yoon, and he immediately wants to go again for a rematch, but Yoon is not the least bit interested in sticking around. He tells Binwoo that he has to get going since he has something important he needs to take care of. Since Binwoo is still itching to keep playing, he throws out the idea that they should try a game of numbers where the whole point is to forget about 10s completely and just shoot wherever they feel like on the target. He also makes the argument that if someone is truly skilled, they should be able to hit absolutely any spot they aim for on the target, and that is what real talent actually looks like. Binwoo then convinces Yoon to give it a shot and try hitting a 10 right at 12 o'clock. Yoon gives it a couple of tries but just cannot quite manage to pull it off the way he wants to, and even then he still finds a way to tease Binwoo about it anyway. Binwoo fires back and tells him that the only reason he is ahead is because he got a head start in archery and has been at it longer than everyone else. When Binwoo steps up and takes his turn, he manages to send the arrow flying exactly where he was aiming, landing it right on the spot he called. With that, the two of them just keep going back and forth arguing with each other the way they always do. Then out of nowhere, their coach comes storming in and starts shouting at both of them for going off and practicing without letting him know first. He punishes them by making them run 10 full laps, and tells them that whoever finishes last is going to have to run 10 more on top of that. Back in the present, Binwoo is still standing there genuinely surprised that Yoon is actually going through with this kind of game and cannot stop wondering what is really going on inside his head. Yoon then steps up, draws back, and sends his arrow flying straight into a 10, and just like that the match comes to an end with Yoon walking away as the winner. Yoon stands there thinking to himself that Gonghyun never really had a shot against him and that Gonghyun himself must have figured that out somewhere along the way. After that, everyone out on the ground starts buzzing and talking about how Yoon is operating on a completely different level from everyone else, pointing out the fact that he made Gonghyun look like an absolute nobody out there. Before long, the whole crowd starts catching the same feeling and thinking that if Gonghyun can be made to look that small, then maybe they all have a real shot at beating him too, and they start making plans to actually go through with it. Junki then completely loses his patience and gets right in Gonghyun's face, demanding to know why he is just standing there like a statue and letting everybody walk all over him and laugh at him for losing the way he did. He also tells him straight up that he is dragging Silla High's reputation and pride through the mud by just standing there and taking it. Just then, the coach walks over and looks at Gonghyun with a concerned expression, telling him that something seems off because he has never once seen him looking this down and defeated before. After that, the coach pulls the boy away and takes him out to grab something to eat so that they can both shake off the mood and come back with a clearer head and a sharper focus on the training ahead. When everyone gathers in the cafeteria, they are furious over receiving crappy food, and it turns out the food is being served based on rankings. Binwoo notices that Junki is eating delicious food, so he asks him if he could have a bite, but he straight up refuses. Sara, who is watching Binwoo, thinks that he is acting well now since he looked so gloomy when he first joined the club. Binwoo then wonders what kind of food our first league are eating, and the other says that they might be eating fancy steaks and burgers. On the other hand, Gonghyun and Yoon along with some other first league players are sitting at a VIP table where they are being served delicious steak. Since Gonghyun hasn't started eating, Yoon asks him if he doesn't like the food. One of the guys with red head says that they shouldn't argue here as they are here to train not fight. Upon hearing that, one of the other guy also says that the same thing, that they are here to support each other and if they fight then the juniors are going to get bad impression of them. Getting fed up with the whole situation, Gonghyun starts to stand up, but Yoon immediately tells him to sit back down because it is the rule. Gonghyun is not satisfied with that answer and asks him straight up who exactly made that rule in the first place, and Yoon tells him plainly that he was the one who made it himself and that if Gonghyun has a problem with it and wants to change anything, then he is going to have to beat him first. After lunch, the special training program is just about ready to kick off and everyone is told to gather out in the field with all of their gear in tow. Just then, Coach Young walks over to the team and introduces himself, letting them know that he is the one in charge of looking after them for this particular session, mostly because everyone seems to think of him as the easygoing and approachable coach. However, he quickly gets frustrated when he looks around and realizes that a full 1/4 of the entire third league is made up of kids from his own club. A little while later, he gathers everyone together and announces that the special training for the day is going to be aimed specifically at the third league archers and will be focused entirely on building up their physical strength. He then lays out his reasoning by explaining that hiking is hands down the best all-around exercise for conditioning the entire body, and because of that every single one of them is going to be hiking all the way up to the very top of the mountain while carrying all of their gear on their backs. Meanwhile, on a completely different track, the first-year archers are getting set up for something much more cutting-edge, as they are going to be doing their training through virtual reality technology. The coach gathers everyone together and tells them that the training they are about to do is specifically designed to build up both their physical and mental strength so that they are able to go out there and perform at a consistent level no matter what. He also lets them know that he is going to be working with them on keeping their cool and maintaining their composure even when things start going sideways and the pressure starts piling on. Through the AR setup, they are actually able to feel the direction the wind is blowing from the vents, and they can even pick up on shifts and changes in the weather through the lighting around them. When the training gets started, Gonghyun reaches over and picks up the AR headset, thinking to himself that he has never tried anything remotely like this before and feeling genuinely excited about what is coming. When he straps on the headset and gets a feel for the controller in his hands, he is immediately struck by the fact that the weight and the grip of the controller feel almost exactly like his actual bow. He then looks around and sees a whole range of different modes laid out in front of him, including tournament, single, and record, and he even gets to customize things like the setting, the weather conditions, and who his opponent is going to be. As he scrolls through everything, he stumbles across a hunting mode where the whole challenge is to track down and hit a moving target. When he goes ahead and clicks on it though, a message immediately pops up telling him straight that the feature is not available yet. Gonghyun shrugs it off and goes ahead and selects the Olympics mode instead, and in an instant he finds himself standing on a massive virtual Olympic stage completely surrounded by a huge and roaring audience on all sides. Back with Coach Young, a guy walks up to him and lets him know that a brand new rule has just been announced. The rule is that the very first person to reach the goal wins, and on top of that the winner walks away with a golden opportunity to move up and advance to the second league. Hearing that, absolutely everyone is caught completely off guard since moving up to the second league is one of the most significant things any of them could accomplish at this stage. The coach pulls the guy aside and tells him that what he personally thinks is truly important here is that the kids walk away having learned something real about unity and working together as one, and that they should all be keeping their focus on what they can take from the experience and the process itself rather than getting completely caught up in the final results. The guy fires back and tells him that there is no way the archers are going to go along with that kind of thinking, and when the coach turns around to look at everyone's reaction for himself, even he is visibly shocked by what he sees. After all of that settles down, the training officially kicks off and the coach walks over to Binwoo and asks him why he looks so completely relaxed and unbothered about everything. Binwoo shrugs it off and says that he is just going to take his time with it and that he is not even the least bit interested in the second league opportunity to begin with. Meanwhile, on a completely different note, Junki is sitting there getting more and more bored out of his mind because his assigned test is to practice shooting arrows in all kinds of different and unusual situations. When one of the third-year students finally drags himself all the way up to the very top of the mountain, one of the staff members standing up there greets him and asks whether he would like to go ahead and leave his gear right there before continuing on. Hearing that, the guy cannot wrap his head around why he would ever have to do something like that after working so incredibly hard to lug all of that stuff up on his back the whole way. On top of that, the thought that he is only halfway through and still has to somehow run all the way to the top while carrying that heavy bag is making him feel sick just thinking about it. The staff member then calmly tells him that he might end up regretting whatever decision he makes, but that at the end of the day the choice is entirely his to make. Just then, two more boys come running up to the same spot, and after a moment all three of them decide to leave their stuff behind right there and take off running toward the top of the mountain as fast as their legs can carry them. When Undong, Sunmi, and the rest of the group finally make it to that same point, the staff member gives them the exact same choice and lays out the same options for them as well. On the other side of things, the coach turns to Binwoo and tells him to pick up the pace because he is falling further and further behind, and if he keeps moving at the rate he is going right now he is going to end up running straight into the kids who are already on their way back down. Just then, the two of them spot one of the students up ahead looking absolutely worn out and completely drained, still struggling to carry all of his gear on his back. The coach makes the call to step in and help him out even though he was very clearly told not to get involved under any circumstances. The coach then turns to the student and asks him how he even ended up here in the first place, since he does not look anything like a member of the EAA. The guy opens up and reveals that he made his way here for one reason only, which is to get revenge on the person who did that kind of damage to his leg. He also says that he wants every single archer here to know just what kind of terrible person that guy really is underneath it all. Both the coach and Binwoo do their best to lift his spirits and encourage him to keep pushing, but when he tells them that he feels completely lost and that he only joined this trip because it felt like his very last shot at something, the two of them feel genuinely bad for him. He goes on to say that he has pretty much made up his mind to walk away from archery for good, since there is simply no way he can keep going out there and competing the way he wants to with a leg that is not working the way it should. The staff member then steps up and welcomes all of them for making it to the checkpoint, letting them know that they are the very last group of archers to reach that particular point. Before the staff member can even finish asking whether they want to leave any of their gear behind at the checkpoint, Binwoo cuts him off and flat out refuses without a second thought. After pushing through all of that, they barely manage to drag themselves all the way up to the very top of the mountain, and when they finally get there they look out and spot a target sitting on the opposite edge of the mountain far across from where they are standing. However, most of the archers are absolutely furious and start thinking that the EAA straight up tricked them, since there is pretty much no realistic way any of them can get an arrow all the way across to the other side without a serious struggle. Binwoo pulls out his bow and stands there thinking to himself that the distance has to be at least 100 meters, which is already way beyond the 70-meter range used in an official match. On top of that, the farthest he has ever shot from in his entire life is 90 meters, which means he is going to need to use his very first arrow just to measure and get a feel for the actual distance. When Binwoo lets his first arrow fly, it shoots out and travels even further than the 100 meters he was expecting, putting the real distance at around 140 meters. After seeing that, all the other archers around him start pulling out their own bows one by one, each of them wanting to step up and give it a shot for themselves. Meanwhile, Gonghyun is in the middle of his virtual Olympics match and keeps knocking down gold medal after gold medal without slowing down. When he finally wraps up, Beach's coach walks over and tells him that it sure looks like he had a great time there since he ended up staying a whole extra half hour beyond what he was supposed to. Gonghyun then turns to the coach and asks whether he would be able to keep coming back and training with this program if he goes ahead and joins the EAA, and the coach tells him that would not be a problem at all. Back at the cliff, every single archer is out there pushing themselves as hard as they possibly can trying to connect with the target, but not one of them has managed to land a proper hit yet. Then just like that, the coach's phone goes off and he picks it up before turning around to let everyone know that a brand new rule has just been put into place. Nobody is going anywhere and nobody is leaving that spot until someone actually manages to hit the target. Hearing that, the whole group completely freaks out, and Sunmi steps in and tells everyone to calm down, saying that it is not the coach's fault and that if anyone has something to say about it they should take it up with the EAA directly. One of the girls then loses her temper and snaps at her, saying that all of them are in this mess because of the students from Silla High in the first place. She even throws in that having Binwoo around is the real problem since he seems to drag bad luck along with him wherever he goes. The guy from before then speaks up and says that if anyone out there is going to be the one to hit that target, it is going to be Binwoo and nobody else. Another guy immediately gets in his face about that and tries to start a fight over it, but Binwoo cuts through all of it and suggests that they settle it by seeing who can hit the target first. The rule they go with is that whoever runs out of arrows first automatically loses, and the biggest problem is that Binwoo is only working with 9 arrows while the other guy is standing there with a full 18. Seeing how uneven that is, Undong and the rest of the archers standing around make the decision to hand their own arrows over to Binwoo so that the two of them at least have a fair shot at the match. After that, both archers step up and get into their positions, and Binwoo stands there thinking to himself that the target is sitting all the way across the cliff at a distance of roughly 140 meters. Binwoo's opponent steps up first and releases his arrow, but it flies way too far off and completely misses the mark. He then shifts his eyes over to Binwoo and thinks to himself that Binwoo is just standing there completely frozen like a statue, and he figures there is no way Binwoo can even work up the nerve to attempt a shot from that kind of distance. The thing is though, arrows are just as important as the bow itself, and every single part of an arrow is carefully tuned and adjusted to match the shooter's personal style and the shape of their body. When it comes to Binwoo, only 8 out of all the arrows out there actually belong to him, and that right there is exactly why he has the upper hand in this situation. Meanwhile, on a completely different note, Yoon walks up to Gonghyun and congratulates him on officially joining the EAA and then points out that since they both come from well-established and prominent families, the same kind of blood is essentially running through both of their veins. He goes on to say that the two of them are the chosen elites of archery, but Gonghyun is not really interested in any of that and just brushes it off and asks Yoon directly whether he knows anything about the hunting mode. Yoon explains that it is a special program that is made available exclusively to members of the EAA, and that it is designed to help a person face and push through their deepest fears while also building their confidence back up from the ground. Yoon then takes him back to the AR so that he could try. He explains that in order to get the most out of the training, each person needs to visualize a space in their head and then type in whatever it is they fear the most, and that could honestly be anything at all, even a specific person. Since Gonghyun has only just joined and does not have his own code set up yet, Yoon tells him to go ahead and use his own code in the meantime. Back on the mountain, Binwoo's opponent is down to only 2 arrows left, and on top of that he is struggling to keep his balance, which is turning out to be his biggest problem by far. The opponent stands there getting more and more nervous as it hits him that he is down to just 1 arrow remaining, and that if he misses, the match is completely over for him. Then an idea pops into his head that he could do exactly what Binwoo did earlier and borrow arrows from someone else around him. When he spins around and looks to one of his friends for help, the guy flat out refuses to hand anything over, so the opponent just takes matters into his own hands and forcefully steals the arrows right from him. After that, the match picks right back up, and Binwoo thinks to himself that he still has 8 arrows left and that he is not about to throw any of them away carelessly. Rather than zeroing in on accuracy, he shifts his focus toward tuning into his senses instead, since at the end of the day all he really needs to do is connect with the target. Then out of absolutely nowhere, Binwoo starts taking his bow apart piece by piece, and before anyone can make sense of what is happening, he is standing there trying to shoot with nothing but a bare bow in his hands, which leaves his opponent completely stunned. This time around, however, Binwoo's arrow comes incredibly close to hitting the target, and that alone is enough to send a wave of shock through everyone watching. It turns out that what he just pulled off is a high-angle shot, which is actually a technique that comes straight out of traditional Korean archery, and that is the exact reason why he took his bow apart the way he did earlier. The coach steps in and confirms that this is absolutely true, pointing out that in traditional archery the target sits at a range of 145 meters, which is actually farther than the distances that archers shoot at in the sport today. He also throws in the fact that hunting bows are capable of sending arrows flying as far as 300 meters, and on top of that he makes it clear that this particular task is not about hitting the bullseye with perfect accuracy, so it really does not matter exactly where the arrow lands as long as it manages to reach the target. The opponent stands there feeling a burning jealousy creeping in and starts wondering out loud whether pulling out a traditional archery technique in what is supposed to be a contemporary archery match could actually be considered cheating. The two of them then draw their bows at the exact same time, and it does not take long at all for everyone watching to figure out that the opponent is actually trying to shoot Binwoo's arrow straight out of the air before it can reach the target. After that, the whole crowd completely erupts and starts cheering Binwoo on because they genuinely start believing that he might actually be able to pull this whole thing off. In the meantime, Gonghyun steps into the hunting mode of virtual reality and comes face to face with the very person he fears the most in the world, which turns out to be his own brother standing right there in front of him. When Gonghyun looks around, he cannot find any targets anywhere, and the only one he can make out is sitting right on his brother's chest. His brother's voice keeps repeating over and over in his head, telling him that he will give him a month for every medal he brings back home, and it is in that moment that Gonghyun finally understands deep down why this mode carries the name hunting mode. Eventually, Gonghyun pushes through and completes his mission, and when he pulls off his AR gear and comes back to reality, he finds Mamoru standing right there waiting for him. Mamoru tells him that there is something he wants him to know, and that is the fact that the person Yoon fears the most in the world is none other than Binwoo. He breaks it down further by explaining that if Gonghyun is serious about taking Yoon down, then he is going to have to go through Binwoo first before any of that can happen. Back on the mountain, Binwoo is now down to his very last arrow, and the girls standing on the side are visibly stressed and worried since he is the only shot they have left at pulling this off. Everyone around him starts pouring on the encouragement and rallying behind him, even going as far as telling him that they will hand over their own arrows if he needs them. Binwoo, however, blocks all of it out and thinks to himself with full certainty that he is going to step up, release this arrow, and hit that target. And then, to absolutely everyone's shock and disbelief, he does exactly that as the arrow flies straight and tears the flag completely apart. After that, everyone rushes over to Binwoo and starts congratulating him all at once, because if it was not for him stepping up the way he did, every single one of them would still be stuck out there with no way out. The boys even take the moment to turn around and call out the girl who had been going around saying that Binwoo was going to bring nothing but bad luck to the group. The coach then gathers everyone together and tells the whole team that he is going to take them all out for ice cream to celebrate. But before anyone can even start heading out, one of the guys steps over to Binwoo's opponent and tells him straight up that he is going to have to hand over his number now. The guy then walks up to Binwoo and places his number 21 tag in his hand, telling him directly that he is going to be coming for him in a ranking rumble very soon. Right around that same time, Yundong's stomach suddenly starts absolutely killing her and it quickly becomes a full-on emergency situation for her. She scrambles as fast as she can to find a decent spot somewhere out in the jungle and then makes a desperate run for it. Watching her bolt off in that direction, Binwoo stands there confused and thinks to himself that she is heading completely the wrong way. While Yundong is out there taking care of business in the middle of the forest, Binwoo comes wandering over looking for her and calls out that they really need to get moving and head back. Just like that, Yundong's absolute worst nightmare becomes very real, as the guy she has a crush on, Binwoo himself, ends up stumbling right into the middle of what is easily the most embarrassing moment of her life. When another guy comes, Binwoo stops him saying he heard an animal scream that might be of a wild boar. When Yundong is done, she starts walking with Binwoo feeling bad about Binwoo seeing her in that state earlier. Binwoo tells her not to worry since she always goes to the bathroom after a match. Yundong then drops down to her knees and opens up, admitting that she gets really nervous every single time she draws her bow and that it has been that way for her ever since she was little. She also throws in that she suffers from chronic constipation on top of everything else, and Binwoo completely loses it laughing and tells her that he has not had a good laugh like that in quite a while. He then reaches out and gives her a hand to help her up, telling her that he never wanted to put her in an embarrassing spot in the first place. As the two of them walk forward together, Yundong finally works up the courage to bring up something that has been sitting in the back of her mind for years, which is the moment when Binwoo picked up her routine card a long time ago. To her surprise, Binwoo actually remembers it clearly and brings up that it was at the national archery competition and that she was sitting on the bench quietly muttering something to herself over and over again. Yundong then asks him if he would be willing to say those same words to her every single time she is about to step up and start a match, and Binwoo agrees without making a big deal out of it. When the two of them get back, Sunmi is right there waiting and immediately starts teasing them by asking how their little date went. Then one of the guys from earlier walks up to Binwoo and lets him know that he is coming for his revenge, explaining that he has gone ahead and challenged the guy who broke his leg to a ranking rumble. When the guy finally shows up and everyone gets a look at who it is, it turns out to be none other than Junki standing right there. Seeing all of this, Binwoo is completely shocked as it starts clicking in his head that this whole time the guy has been talking about Junki, who beat him up so badly that his leg ended up being permanently injured because of it. Junki then notices the guy walking with a limp and asks him whether he is even getting any kind of rehab for it. However, Binwoo stands there thinking to himself that the Junki he knows would have already thrown a punch by now without thinking twice, and the fact that he is holding back says something. The guy then steps up and throws a ranking rumble challenge directly at Junki, but Junki turns it down without even blinking. Binwoo thinks to himself that the fact that Junki refuses that quickly and without any hesitation at all means that he is going to end up with another X mark on his back because of it. He also gets a feeling deep down that Junki was not just going around bullying this guy for absolutely no reason, and that there is probably some kind of misunderstanding sitting underneath all of this that nobody has gotten to the bottom of yet. Binwoo then steps forward and asks Junki directly whether he really was the one who hurt that guy's leg that badly, and that question sends Junki over the edge as he fires back furiously and asks Binwoo if he wants him to do the exact same thing to his leg. When Junki storms off and leaves, the guy completely loses his footing and falls to the ground trying to go after him, and the people standing nearby all stop and take notice of what just happened. Everyone then recognizes the guy as Baiyal, who turns out to have been a really solid archer back in his younger days and even held the position of second best archer in the entire EAA at one point in time. Hearing that, Binwoo starts wondering to himself whether Baiyal used to train alongside Yundao back in those days. Later on, Junki sits there thinking about the fact that he beat Baiyal really badly and a wave of guilt starts washing over him about the whole thing. The following day, Binwoo heads outside to get some practice in when he notices Junki walking around with 2 X marks sitting on his back. Binwoo pulls him aside and tells him straight up that he is going to get sent home if he picks up even one more mark, and then asks him why he keeps dodging and avoiding Baiyal the way he does. Binwoo does not let it go either and keeps pushing, asking him why he is refusing to step up and accept the challenge, and tells him that he knows deep down that Junki is not the terrible person that he seems to think he is. Getting completely fed up with the whole conversation, Junki snaps at him and tells him to get lost before turning around and walking away. Later, Binwoo comes across Baiyal standing at the notice board and pinning up a note that is calling for Junki to be kicked out entirely. After that, Baiyal sits down with Binwoo and lays out the whole story from the beginning, telling him that the two of them actually go all the way back to when they were little kids since both of their families spent a lot of time together back then. In a flashback, Junki's mother brings him to an archery coach and tells the coach up front that Junki is an incredibly hard-working and dedicated boy. It turns out that Junki's mother has already gone ahead and struck a deal with Baiyal's family, and now she is dead set on making sure that Junki beats Baiyal no matter what it takes. The very next day, Junki and Baiyal are out on the ground training together side by side, and even though Junki finds the whole thing pretty boring and uninteresting, Baiyal is right there telling him that archery is actually a lot of fun. Just then, Baiyal's mother shows up at the very same coach that Junki goes to and sits down to ask the coach to push Baiyal so incredibly hard in training that he ends up beating Junki when it counts. Junki's mother firmly believes that being a skilled archer is going to help him perform better in school as well, which is why she wants him to be at the top of everything he does, and living up to the kind of expectations she sets is anything but easy for him. Later on, Baiyal excitedly tells Junki that he got accepted into the EAA and that they even handed him a special prize on top of that. Slowly but surely, Baiyal starts to change as he begins throwing himself into training harder than pretty much anyone else around him, and he even starts canceling plans he had already made with Junki to go out and spend time together. Baiyal is not really driven by a dream of becoming the national champion, and he is not particularly interested in heading off to medical school either. Little by little, Baiyal pushes his training later and later into the night, and before long the toll it takes on his body becomes serious enough that visible health issues start showing up that are impossible to ignore. He also tells Junki that he does not even bother checking the time anymore these days because his mom stopped coming to pick him up a long time ago. He says that all he is ever supposed to do day in and day out is study and train from morning to night with nothing else in between. Junki tries to tell him that he really needs to switch things up and do something different for once, but Baiyal completely snaps at him and fires back by calling him a total loser who has not managed to win even a single medal to his name. That right there is the moment when the friendship between the two of them really starts to crack and fall apart. Not long after that, an archery tournament comes around where Junki gets knocked out all the way back in the preliminaries, while Baiyal on the other hand fights his way through and makes it all the way to the finals. Later that same day, Baiyal tracks down Junki and tells him that he is completely fed up and at his breaking point with his mother, who pushes him to train like a machine every single hour of every single day with no room to breathe. He even goes as far as saying that everything would finally be over for him if he just broke his leg and could not compete anymore. He then straight up begs Junki to break his leg for him so that he can finally get some rest and relief, but Junki responds by punching him hard across the face instead. After beating him up, Junki turns around and heads straight back home without looking back. The very next day, Baiyal is making his way down the stairs with the thought in his head that he is going to go find Junki and apologize to him after the competition wraps up, but before he can do any of that, someone pushes him down the stairs. Later that day, Binwoo cannot stop turning that whole story over in his head, feeling more and more like something about it just does not add up no matter how he looks at it. Gonghyun then walks over to Binwoo and congratulates him on being recognized as an elite archer. Gonghyun stands there thinking to himself that it is pretty strange how the best archer in the entire EAA is somehow afraid of Binwoo, yet Binwoo is sitting all the way down at the very bottom of the rankings. Gonghyun then turns to Binwoo and straight up tells him to go ahead and challenge him to a ranking rumble, which completely catches Binwoo off guard because the last thing he wants right now is to end up with an X mark on his back. Binwoo gets even more heated and tells Gonghyun that he cannot just go around expecting everything to fall his way simply because he happens to be sitting in the first league. Before turning around and heading off, Gonghyun tells him that he is letting it go for today, but that he is going to come back and ask him the exact same thing every single day until Binwoo finally gives in and accepts his challenge. Shortly after that, Gonghyun pulls out Yundong's routine card that he happened to come across on his way over and asks Binwoo why he should be the one giving it to her. Gonghyun does not waste any time dancing around it and tells him straight up that the reason is simple, which is that he is her boyfriend. Later that evening, Binwoo heads over to meet with Yundong, who cannot even begin to hide how excited she is since this is the very first time Binwoo has ever come to see her on his own. He hands her the routine card and tells her that Gonghyun was the one who found it, but she looks it over and tells him flat out that it is not hers. Right then and there, it hits Binwoo that there might be a mix-up involved in all of this, just like the kind of mistake that happened with Baiyal, since Baiyal never actually got a clear look at the person who pushed him from behind that day. He then takes off running straight to where Baiyal is and tells him directly that he does not believe for a single second that it was Junki who pushed him down those stairs. Baiyal pushes back and says that he is completely certain it was him because he spotted his trademark right there at the scene. He goes on to explain that he is the one who personally gifted the keychain to Junki and even had his initials engraved right into it so there would be no mistaking it. Binwoo then asks him one more question, wanting to know who his opponent was in the finals that day, and Baiyal tells him that it was none other than Yoon Dao. Later that day, Junki runs into a first year in the bathroom who seems to be smoking secretly. He scolds him and says that if he don't stop this then he is going to report him. When Junki gets out he runs into Binwoo who was looking for him all over the place. Junki furiously tells him to get lost as he is not in the mood to hear him. When Binwoo says that he heard Baiyal's side of the story this makes Junki even more furious. Junki says that he went too far and Baiyal was under a lot of pressure from that final match. He says that he had no idea that Baiyal was going to fall down the stairs from shock. However, Binwoo then reveals that Baiyal told him somebody pushed him from behind. Hearing that, Junki gets surprised and says he wouldn't do something like that. Binwoo says that it's because Baiyal saw his trademark keychain and asks where he is. Junki says that he lost it and it fell while he was fighting with Baiyal. Binwoo lays it all out and says that the person who took the trademark was the one who pushed him, and that this person was not only a member of the EAA but also took part in that very same competition on that day. Binwoo then drops the bombshell and reveals that the person behind all of it was none other than Yoon Dao himself. Just then, an announcement cuts through everything and calls for everyone to make their way out to the yard immediately. Jasmine steps up and informs the entire group that somebody has gone ahead and filed a report saying that a fellow archer has broken a major code of conduct. She also makes it crystal clear that the use of any and all substances that have a negative effect on either mental or physical health is strictly banned across the board. Jasmine then calls Junki to step forward, and when he reaches into his pocket, he pulls out a smoking packet sitting right there. It turns out that one of the members from Beach had slipped it into his pocket earlier without him knowing anything about it. Yoon then steps forward and takes the opportunity to get right in Junki's face, teasing him and telling him that as a member of the EAA he is nothing but a complete disgrace to every single one of them. Junki fires back and tells him straight up that he is the one who has been cooking up all of these dirty schemes from the beginning, but Yoon just smirks and tells him that if he wants the truth to come out then he is going to have to beat him in a match first. Right at that moment, Binwoo steps forward and throws down a challenge, calling Yoon out to a ranking rumble on the spot. It turns out, Yoon hated Binwoo ever since he was a child, and Binwoo saw him shooting archers for the first time. During that time, Binwoo approaches Yoon because he found archery quite fun and wanted to give it a try, but his mom stops him saying he shouldn't disturb him. At that moment, Yoon felt that Binwoo left a bad first impression on him because to him, he was rude. Yoon's mom shows up and greets Binwoo saying it's okay to let him have a try. Yoon found Binwoo incredibly annoying and he wished he never had met him on that day. Before long, Yoon's mom notices that Binwoo has something really special going on with his eyes and figures out that he could actually be really good at archery because of it, so she goes ahead and lets him give it a try. Yoon however stands there thinking to himself that the worst chapter of his entire life is about to kick off right in front of him. Both Yoon's mother and Binwoo's mother sit there fully expecting that Binwoo is not going to be able to pull off a proper shot, but the moment Binwoo actually releases the arrow, both of them are left completely speechless and shocked by what they see. Yoon's mother immediately turns to him and asks how in the world he managed to do that, and Binwoo simply tells her that he just watched what Yoon was doing and copied it. Right at that moment, Yoon's mother looks at Binwoo and tells him flat out that he was born to be an archer and that it is his destiny. The very next day, Yoon comes bouncing back home in a really good mood, but that mood gets completely wiped out the second he walks through the door and finds Binwoo already sitting there in his house, leaving him frustrated and wondering what he is even doing there. Yoon's mother then comes in and cheerfully explains that she was the one who invited him, and that starting from now on Yoon and Binwoo are going to be training together as a pair. Later on, while Yoon is in the middle of his shooting practice, his mother jumps on him and scolds him, reminding him that she has already told him to keep a completely straight and serious face at all times while he is shooting. She further scolds him that Binwoo is his sparring partner and it's not a big deal. After that, Binwoo shoots a 10, and Yoon's mother acknowledges him for that. Soon, Yoon made up his mind that he is going to destroy Binwoo. Back in the present, Binwoo and Yoon are standing across from each other ready to go, and Yoon finds himself with absolutely no choice but to go ahead and accept Binwoo's challenge. Some of the people watching are already talking amongst themselves saying that there is no way Binwoo is going to come out on top against someone like Yoon that easily. Jasmine then pulls the coaches aside and tells them that they are going to hold off on handing down Junki's punishment until the match is completely finished, and that if Yoon ends up winning, every single student from Silla High is getting kicked out of the program on the spot. She also makes it clear that if Binwoo manages to pull off the win, Junki is going to be given a second chance to stay. Yoon then turns to Binwoo and brings up the fact that the two of them were standing right next to each other at the shooting line together 3 years ago. Yoon then asks him how he wants to play this thing out, and Binwoo does not even hesitate before saying that they should just run it back and play the number game. Yoon is genuinely caught off guard hearing that and takes a moment before eventually agreeing to it, even though deep down what he really wants is to make Binwoo suffer as much as possible through all of this. Binwoo then reaches up and takes the sight clean off his bow, which completely throws Yoon off, but Binwoo calmly explains that he finds the sight pretty much useless in a situation like this one, and that even though having a sight is normally the most critical thing in a moment like this, what he needs right now is to use his own body as his sight instead so that he can push his senses and awareness to a whole new level. Since Yoon really does not have much of a choice at that point, he sighs and goes ahead and strips the sight right off his own bow as well. The match kicks off with Yoon stepping up and calling number 10, and when he releases his arrow it lands right on the 10 without any trouble at all. Now it is Binwoo's turn, and pretty much everyone watching already has a pretty good idea about how much he lets his ego run the show, and on top of that there is no way he can pull this off since he has not played the number game in a full 3 years. Binwoo then shoots and the arrow lands on 9, which puts a big smile on Yoon's face, but when he realizes that Binwoo actually called 9 on purpose, that smile disappears fast and the shock sets in. After that, Yoon steps back up and knocks down another perfect shot, and now Binwoo is in a spot where he absolutely cannot afford to miss because he has to make this next one count. He stands there and tries to go back in his head to what he felt the moment he hit that 9, and when he lets the arrow go it lands right on 9 again. Now it is Yoon's turn once more, and even though hitting any point on that target is no real challenge for him, the way this game works means that the person walking away with the higher total score at the end is the one who wins. Yoon draws back and sends his arrow into the 10, and when Binwoo steps up he puts his arrow down exactly on the same spot as his last 2 shots without missing a beat. Yoon then turns to him and asks him which number he is going to go with this time around, and Binwoo looks back at him and says he is sticking with 9. During the second set, Binwoo shoots at 9 once again, and Yoon is now confused wondering what he is even up to. Yoon thinks that he is trying to remember his senses and the only reason he's choosing the same point again and again is because that's where his first arrow landed. To counter Binwoo's strategy, Yoon tries to shoot at 10 at 4 o'clock. Binwoo thinks that this is a nice move but to beat Yoon he has to lay on the pressure. Binwoo steps up and shoots at that exact same spot once again, and everyone watching is left completely stunned when they see that all 3 of Binwoo's arrows are lined up perfectly in a straight row right next to each other. And it is not just that his shots are accurate either, they are hitting the exact same point every single time without any variation at all. By this point the second set is already wrapped up, Binwoo is doing really well, and all he needs to do now is land a 10 in the next set to take the whole match. Baiyal stands there and says that Binwoo is giving it everything he has got, but at the end of the day nobody can actually beat Yoon and that is just the reality of it, and on top of that if Binwoo ends up losing then the truth about what really happened to him is going to stay buried and hidden forever. Junki pushes back and says that Binwoo can still come out on top if he finds a way to flip the odds in his favor, but Baiyal shoots that down right away by pointing out that the odds always lean toward whoever is already winning, so how is he supposed to flip anything when he is already on the losing side of things? Junki then brings up the fact that they are playing the number game, and that the number game at its core is really all about having the guts to go through with it when everything is on the line. He also brings up something Binwoo told him earlier, which is that anyone can win in this game if they play their cards right and get inside their opponent's head. He goes on to say that the real trick is to slowly chip away at the opponent's confidence until they stop believing in themselves, and that once the opponent starts drowning in their own anxiety and self-doubt, that is exactly when the upper hand shifts over to the other side. How long do you think it will take for Binwoo to fully overcome his trauma and climb back to the top of the rankings? Comment Archery if you'd like a part 2 of the series. Make sure to like and subscribe the channel for more sports manhwa recaps.